Right.
Oh, and Sean, if you could let me know when Brandon has his hand raised, I'm not able to see that from my vantage point.
Okay. All right. So we do have 6:30. We do have a quorum of members present. We have Brandon Lang online. We have Kim Madden here in person, Chair Myers here in person, and Dave Lorman here in person.
All right, 6:30, we have a quorum. I call this meeting of the Public Works Committee to order. First item on the agenda are the minutes from the meeting on 4/22/2024. Are there any corrections that members present would like to offer to those minutes? Hearing none, I accept the minutes as written. Next item, item number 2, Lake Street and Dewey Court reconstruction, public hearing 23-122. Sean, go ahead.
Sure. And so as way of introduction, for those who haven't yet met me, I'm Sean Stowski. I'm the Director of Public Works and City Engineer. So you, I hope, all got an invitation to this meeting here tonight for this purpose of discussing the Lake Street and Dewey Court reconstruction project, and specifically the assessments that are associated with it. Maybe let me back up just half a step. We very recently, the city very recently awarded a construction contract to Speedway Sand and Gravel. This morning I sent out their notice and the contract. So that's all in the works of getting signatures and bonds. We do not yet have a window date for construction. So we gave them a window that we could live with and said, what's best for you? Right? In preparing their bid, they factored that in, that we gave them some flexibility. So we said sometime between early June effectively and late October, get this done, but pick your 90-day window within that. And we have not yet heard that. So when I know more, I'll let you know more, at least folks who have given me emails. And I know over at the condo area, we have some pretty solid contacts, so they'll share information too, I'm sure, with members. That said, we normally have our contract hours in effect here. So 7:30 a.m. is typically the start of a construction day. Sometimes crews will show up and just start working on fairly quiet site work, but not firing up their diesel-driven engines. So at 7 o'clock, you might see people around, maybe greasing things or, moving some stuff around, but pretty quiet work. And the workday ends at 6 p.m. Most contractors finish up and leave the site well prior to that, but we allow till 6. Contractor is responsible for maintaining traffic during construction. I know that's a little difficult in this area. I haven't heard from them whether they've got an intention of opening up temporarily Middleton Beach Road, much like we had to do when Middleton Beach Road was under construction to open up Lake Street. That may be something that they're interested in looking into, but I haven't heard from them an intention of that. They may be able to continue traffic without having to do that. But things will be no parking zones, obviously. So Lake Street will temporarily not be allowed for parking on the street just because the whole thing's a construction zone. For anyone who would routinely park on the street, finding a side street or a parking lot would be in your interest. Other than that, we have trash collection, depending on which side of the street you're on, either Thursday or Friday. We typically do not change that date, but we do try to route garbage trucks in early. So even if they don't normally come till 1 p.m, during construction, they'll often come at 6 a.m. to get in and get out prior to getting in conflict with a trench or whatever work is going on. Appliance collection, brush collection, those kinds of things, typically we try not to do. If you have a special need at some point during the project, give me a call and we'll see what we can work out. Obviously, if there's widespread storm damage and brush collection just has to be coordinated within that 90-day window, we'll figure that out too. But ordinarily, less traffic in there is better for all of us. And I would say too, we have a pretty typical sequence of construction you can expect. It's not contractual. That's up to the contractor to figure out how best to get this job done. But for the most part, they tend to start deep and work their way up. So they'll start on sanitary sewer and water main typically, then get into storm sewer. While water main is getting through its pressure tests and bacteriological safe tests, they'll temporarily bury it for a little while. Then they'll come back and start connecting services after it's safe. So if you see the pipe crew going through putting the main in and they haven't yet connected your water, don't worry about that. That's on purpose. They'll come back later and dig up the same spot they had just dug up and buried, just so that they can connect services over. It might look a little bit inefficient, but that's the best way to do this safely. So other than that, it's going to be mostly adjusting manhole castings in a couple of places, replacing them, doing some spot repairs on soft subgrade so we don't get future potholes, and then paving the street. And the last thing we'll see is, topsoiling, grass restoration, that sort of thing. Getting into more of the assessment schedule, and maybe it'll be helpful if I bring that up as we're going through it a little bit. Because while I see this a lot, I'm not sure everybody does. And maybe I'll just pick a random line someplace in here, right? So kind of the first stuff that you see is a parcel identification number, an address. And then there's this little column that has either an F or a C in it. F internally just means that this is work being done along a frontage. So if you front on Lake Street, there'll be an F in this column. If your corner lot or rear of the lot is in the work zone, then you'll see a C in there. And effectively that influences the next column, which says either then we charge full price if it's road frontage, or 75% of the sidewalk price if it involves corner lot work, right? So if it's side yard or backyard where there's sidewalk involved, then there's a 25% credit per policy. The next columns in blue are just square footages. So these are estimates based on the plan drawings. We'll actually come by after they build things and take actual measurements. But these are the bid prices. So these are contract prices per square foot for either 5-inch thick sidewalk or 7-inch thick sidewalk. And the 7-inch thick sidewalk goes in through commercial driveway openings. We give a little extra depth on that concrete, so when trucks go through there, it doesn't all crack. The driveway apron columns are pretty much all the same thing, except all these will be 50% charged. So the city taxpayers are paying 50%. The abutting property owner is paying 50%. Again, that's a policy thing. And then we've got our square footages. There's sometimes an A for if it's existing asphalt that we're taking out, but we put back concrete. And so if we're taking out concrete, there's a C, taking out asphalt, there's an A. That's got a cost. And then we charge for new either residential or commercial driveway aprons, again, 5 inches thick or 7 inches thick at these prices, which then have a subtotal, and we apply a 15% engineering admin overhead charge for the inspections and the measuring and the billing and all that stuff. But the city some years ago set a cap on that at $200 so that those who have very high assessment costs aren't paying much higher than anybody else, engineering and admin costs. And so we just total that all up and set the bill. In terms of the Century Harbor Condos Association, because there are so many sub owners in there. I think it was 66 parcel identification numbers in total. I just wanted to show an overall total in that spreadsheet, but then in subsequent sheets divided that out 66 ways. So when the bills go out, it'll go out to each individual parcel number. But at least it gave a high level view of what the total bill is for the condos.
A question about that particular part.
Okay.
Of the presentation. If there were, say, an eight-family.
Oh, to do me a favor, would you mind going to the microphone just so folks who are online can actually hear you too? That'll be handy.
And please say your name as well.
Sure, Scott Andre, Century Harbor Road, I'm with the condo association. If there were, say, an eight-family apartment there, and there were new sidewalks put in front, would the person like who owns that building have to pay like 8 parcels of liens against that property, or would they pay the normal residential rate for the property?
It's 1/66th of the frontage of the condo property.
But you get where I'm going with this? In other words, it seems to me like, well, and if you look, it's a very long stretch of property from the back of that lot to the front of there. And that property has, there's different people, but are we getting the same type of treatment that somebody who is like, let's just say that there were a bunch of duplexes there or a bunch of 4-family or 8-family units there with apartments or whatever, would they be paying under the same kind of a rate that we're paying under?
It's the same rate, yes, because it's all square feet of sidewalk that's getting paid. So if a property has a much, much longer frontage, they conceivably have a much, much larger bill versus someone that has a 40-foot long frontage of street that would have 40 feet times 5 feet of sidewalk, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. I guess what I'm saying is that just because we have a relatively short stretch of land for the number of people that we have in our condo complex, like what if you were doing the sidewalks all the way around? We would be inundated with charges for putting in new sidewalks all the way around. And so you're putting in one side, it sounds like we're doing 66. No, we're not. Divide that by 3. Okay, and so that's how many people are gonna have to pay for that sidewalk. Okay, so instead of 66, now we're talking 22. So 22 people will have to pay for that sidewalk.
Why is that?
Because we have 3 different sides in our building that have sidewalk all the way around it.
And we add all of that up and then divide it by 66.
You're gonna replace the sidewalk entirely around the property?
No, we have some on Dewey Court and some on Lake Street.
Or you're not going all the way on Dewey Court? And you're not,
Correct, just some areas.
I don't know, so I guess this is probably not maybe the best place to pursue this. I feel like we're being overcharged. That's all I'm gonna say at this stage. And I think if we looked at this and compared it to other properties that are being assessed for the amount of footage that's being done for the amount of residents, I think you'll see that we're actually paying more than we ought to be.
Okay.
Okay, we can pursue that. Maybe not online is the best time.
I may be able to better explain it, in a different setting.
Yeah, I guess I know, because I know you guys are making a decision here real soon on this.
Sure,
And I just want to make sure that we're not getting shortchanged here, because it seems to me like the fee is the door is something for the amount of what we're getting for it.
okay,
So.
yeah,
You're right.
and
I don't know why
so
we have to pay so much and everybody else gets to pay so little.
Hey,
Well-
Charles,
don't want to say that. I do want to say that per square foot, every property on this project is getting assessed the same cost per square foot.
hey, Charles or Sean,
In other words, the cost of concrete is the same per square foot for everyone. I agree.
Hold on just a sec. Sorry, Brandon.
are you guys opening it up for public comment?
Well, it was just a question while we were on that part. I have very little left that I wanted to go over. But that's a
I
fair,
just wanted to maybe point order that we should wait on public comment until Charles opens it.
that's a fair point.
Yeah.
Just wait. We'll wait and see what else comes up here and then
Okay.
come back.
So we were talking a little bit about the assessment schedule, how we figured that out, what these various columns mean. I'm open to anybody with any questions about that to go over it with more detail and with real world examples about how this affects your individual property that I just can't get into at this meeting. But I will say costs are based on bid prices, so this is not an estimate. Assessable costs in total come in a little bit under $45,000, which is about 3% of the project entirely, which was awarded at just under $1.4 million. So all of the costs that are not assessable are being paid from either general taxes or utility funds. Those are our sources of funding for this. Bills, when they're sent out, oh, I should preface that, right? After the project construction, we'll come by and measure what was actually built. So we have a set of drawings. Sometimes we build a little bit more, sometimes we build a little bit less. We'll send out the bill for what was actually built. But it cannot be more than the council adopted final assessment schedule, which once adopted by the council, I'll be mailing a copy of that out with the final assessment resolution to every affected property owner. And then that sets a ceiling. It could be less than that, but it cannot be more than that. If there are any questions about interest payments, so if somebody wants to pay this off over several years, that's fine. Bill Burns, our finance director, can answer questions about the interest payments. If someone's making payments over years, all the tree removals are set by a city forester. So we've already had some evaluation and talks, and that's reflected in the removals plan. And if anybody wants additional work done on the property or even out in the right of way, if we're not planning to replace something, but you just want some extra work done, just let me know about that. And I can often coordinate that with the contractor. If it's out in the right of way, we can flat out require it at your cost, if it's at your request. If it's on private property, sometimes they're willing to do that, but their price does not have to match the bid price, and they don't have to be willing to do that. So
is right away the same as easement? Just can you define that for me, please?
oh, sure. That's a great question. So for those that online, the question just came in, is right of way the same as easement? They're slightly different things. So the road right of way that I would talk about is the street, the terrace areas, the sidewalk. And typically those are 66 feet wide to get all those things in. And we call that right of way. Beyond that, we have easement areas. So for instance, if we're outside of the street right of way, we have a water main, for instance, right, that runs along the backyard, the lake edge yard of the condominium property. That's just an easement. We do not own that land. We just have some very specific rights of a thing that we can do in that land. So it's not city owned, but the water utility can put a water main there. And that's kind of the difference between those two things. It's basically an ownership interest differentiation. So I think that's the highlights of what I really wanted to run over. If there were any problems, any conflicts, any special issues that come up, let me know about those. My contact information is on the letters I send out. It's on the emails I send out, and it's on the city webpage. So I always hope to be easy to find, even if I'm busy enough that I'm not always easy to get in touch with.
All right.
So that was everything I wanted to cover on this.
So your presentation is over. Great. I'm going to open the floor for public comments in order to better include people who are watching online. If you could please make your comments from the microphone, that would be helpful. And Sean, do we have people online as well who?
I'll be monitoring. So if anybody online wants to speak, if you could find in Zoom the raise hand feature. I know every time they update, things move around. But ideally on your screen, you'll find a way to raise hand, and then I'll be able to see that in my view of participants.
Okay,
So let me make sure the room microphone is on. You have your hand up, Jeannie?
yeah.
If you don't
Um,
mind speaking into the microphone, this turns off every now and then, so if any of you notice this green light is not on,
Okay.
feel free to push the button.
Sean, my comment is not related to the assessment, so I'm not sure when to bring this up, but you mentioned that it's possible that Speedway Sand and Gravel may want to open up Middleton Beach Road cul-de-sac temporarily.
They may potentially need to keep traffic moving as they're doing utility work.
Okay, I just want to remind the city and Public Works that when Middleton Beach Road was redesigned, it's our understanding that it was designed for non-commercial traffic in terms of strength and all of that. So my concern would be if they have heavy construction equipment that they would be taking down the road and through the cul-de-sac. We want to make sure that there isn't any damage done to the road that was just redone in 2022.
Okay.
And is there any way, if they do need that to help manage traffic, to maybe only allow smaller vehicles, not construction equipment, to go through there? Residents, for example, if it's difficult to get out on Allen, as opposed to having dump trucks and other heavy equipment going up and down the street.
Yeah, that's a good question. So when I referenced that, that's really background traffic that would otherwise be in conflict with construction traffic. For instance, right, if they're putting in water main just west of the driveway of the Lake Street Apartments, there might be no other good way for those folks to get out of there or back home other than going through Middleton Beach Road. But this is not intended as some sort of access for construction equipment from
Well, that's why I
Speedway.
just want to make sure that we're clear on that.
Yeah, they should
because
be
we
able to
don't wanna-
manage the work zone to work from the, inside out or outside in, however they want to do it. But
Yeah.
they should be able to access their own zone. It was more a concern that we don't want to trap vehicles from residents.
Right, I understand that. So the other question would be, can you at least keep me, I'm Ginny Corwin, by the way, I live on Middleton Beach Road. If you could at least keep me informed when if those changes take place, so I can at least let the neighbors know, I'd appreciate that.
Sure, yeah.
all right.
Hi, I'm Tom Yost. I've lived at Century Harbor for over 30 years. And during that whole time, I've always been able to get from our property to Lake Street to launch a canoe or kayak or whatever. And it looks to me like this plan has a wall of plantings, bushes, maybe 3 feet high, that would block that access. That'd be on the southeast corner of our property, the northeast corner of your property. Is that something that's definite or is it on the plan?
I feel a little bit like we're straying into plan design questions, and this is really a public hearing for the assessments.
Okay.
I'm happy to talk with you about the design, but I feel like we should do it outside this meeting.
Sure. Okay, thank you.
Hi, evening. Tom Carmen on 6053 Lake Street. That's a property I own, and also 2623 Middleton Beach Road. So 2 properties on Lake Street on the south side. My ask really is, my understanding is that the resolution will allow the assessment to be paid over 3 years. And I'd like to ask if there's flexibility to increase that if we can. 5 years would be very helpful. If we can go longer, the reason I'm asking is because I think we're hearing concern about cost. Properties there, really, there's no one there except for the Boathouse Association that has the equivalent of just one small property curb length or shorter. The rest of us are paying for quite a length of street curb and sidewalk. So it would be very helpful to be able to handle that over an extended period of time as possible. Right now, for example, my two properties, I'll be paying close to $6,000. Over 3 years, that will be almost the equivalent of the taxes I pay each year. So that'd be like adding a third property tax for me to handle over 3 years. So put that in perspective. So
Sure.
basically about $2,000 plus the interest.
Yep.
Each year. That's quite a bit for one individual to handle. So I think, Harbor Athletic Club and the Wellness Center are going to be getting quite a charge as well. And so that's one entity, and the Century Condos is going to be getting quite a charge as well. So just ask for the flexibility that you can add if possible, for allowing an extended period for repayment.
Okay, that's a great point, Tom. And to the committee, I'm not certain that with this membership, we've run into this before. Our typical assessment resolution is written for 3-year installments, but the city has in past for high assessment bills, and sometimes they're multiple tens of thousands of dollars gone as high as 7 years. So that really is a policy decision that the committee could make a recommendation to the council. But for the reason Tom mentioned, we can, as a city, and have in the past, provided that flexibility.
I think that'd be very helpful for the neighbors to help support this project and complete it, but be able to handle the cost that's coming with it as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Are there any other public comments?
Sarah, oh, hold on, keep your hand up, Sarah.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, go right ahead.
My name is Corin Schimmel, Century Harbor Condos. I guess one question I have, part of my comment, is that okay if we ask questions?
Sure.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of owners aren't getting a clear picture of where do we court and where on Lake. We understand Lake a lot better. Like, do we pay up to that proposed new park? Is that the sidewalk? And then there's some talk of it going up to 6 feet for ADA. So are we incurring extra costs for the wider sidewalk along that Lake Street part? And then on Dewey, how many feet is that? I mean, we just have this, set of feet, but it's like, what's on Dewey, what's on Lake?
Sure.
To help explain to owners what exactly we're getting charged for too.
Okay.
And the feet of the concrete, is it 4-foot sidewalk, the 6 foot is ADA compliant? Are we getting charged extra because it widens because the park is trying to, do this accessibility
Sure.
thing?
Sure. That might be one of those design questions too, that's better for me to sit down with you and other members of the association board that are interested and that are going to get these kinds of questions to make sure you have a solid understanding of what's going on and why.
Because it's hard to just say like, we have this many square feet and that's that, like,
Sure.
we have a huge park and where is this?
Sure. Yeah.
Um,
And so between drawings and numbers, maybe it'll be easier for me to help.
I went through all the drawings.
Okay.
On the 46 or 7 pages of
Yeah.
engineering drawing.
Yeah.
So that's where I see where it really widens out and then it goes into the park. And it cuts off, we stop paying at the park, I assume, we don't pay for the sidewalk meandering through or any of that concrete.
Correct. There's sidewalk in the park, there's sidewalk around the bulb of the cul-de-sac. There's a curb ramp right near where those ADA stalls are. So that's not something we would assess. Those are either, cul-de-sac costs or park costs or curb ramps the city pays for. So that shouldn't be factored in.
You can't just pull the map and show us exactly.
I think it might take some time if we try doing it during the meeting.
Then I guess a couple other things, if they're relevant to the assessment of the sidewalk, is with the construction project with this and the sidewalk lane in, Allen and Century are gonna be losing lanes, right?
Yes, so to get across both Allen and Century Avenue. So Allen Boulevard, we have to cross with a sanitary sewer, and Century Avenue, we have to cross with a water main. To get across there, the contractor needs a little bit of room for a work zone, which means they have to throttle the traffic down to 2 lanes instead of 4 lanes. So they'll have kind of a rolling pattern to get across there of moving traffic one side or the other.
So last year, when you had the farther up on Allen construction, we remember we had lanes closed off on Allen.
Oh, the MMSD
by
project?
Kingstown, Newberry.
Yes.
One thing I noticed, and I don't know if this will be a problem or not, but it was a problem last year, was people started using, as it backed up across Allen to Century going eastbound, traffic started blasting down Lake, take that quick left on Century Harbor Road, which is a private road that we have to pay for to fix. And it's in shambles right now, because between all that throughway traffic that was cutting through from construction, and then the Lake 61 construction, which lines semis up and backhoes up on our private road, so you get the message that we're a private road that we have to pay to pave. My concern is with this construction project, we're gonna have an influx of, who knows, heavy equipment going through, people cutting through. It's already become kind of a hazard with this cut through. So this construction is gonna force people to take that road, right, and get out to the east quick on Century. And will that be barricaded, I guess, partly too, with construction, or?
We wouldn't intend to barricade that if you want us to barricade that.
We
I-
talked about
I'm not-
barricading it ourselves, the eastbound, because we can get through our ramp to either side, because there's so much traffic going through there now and at high speeds. And Harbor has this like childcare center on the side of the building there that kids are, kind of going to the street once in a while.
Mhm.
So it becomes a little troublesome.
Not fenced there either.
There's a lot of traffic going up our private road, extreme amount. I just want to make the city aware of that,
Okay.
that we're dealing with, and it's in shambles right now because of that.
Yeah.
And so I'm concerned that this project may force some more things on that road. We talked about repairing, but at this point, we might wait another year.
Yeah. Yeah, I can't guarantee what people will decide to do, whether it's
Well,
right or
also
wrong.
contractors, 'cause like
But
Jenny said, she doesn't want her road ripped up. Well, we've already gotten our road ripped up from other contractors saying, I thought it was a city road.
Oh.
They weren't aware that this is a private road, that Century Harbor Road is a private road.
sure, yeah.
So that's kind of an issue that we're concerned about. And then when you're putting the sidewalk in, I guess you're taking out some of our trees and our bushes. You're just going to the maximum amount of your, what is it, easement or right of way?
Sufficient to build the sidewalk along the north side of Lake Street, that one? Yep, right.
So are the trees on the city side or our side that they're being taken down?
I think the trees that are over where the water main needs to go, I think those are on your side of the property line.
And it's just removing because we were
Because,
told they were illegal. But there's trees around the neighborhood, so is
well,
that something we can save, or is it like we're gonna lose them?
they're in the water main trench. So to put the water main 6 feet underground, they'll have to dig through that area, 8 feet wide to get down 6 feet to be able to put the new water main in. And I think it's not so much illegal as we don't allow trees over water main easements. But it's not like it's against the law, it's just against the rules of the easement.
And what I understood was when that curb went in, like that was pretty much like the Lake Street has been widened already, once we get around the corner,
Yeah.
that it's been widened. And that you're kind of maxed out, or is that not true? Like how much farther in do your surveyor say that you have to go up past the curb on our property?
That's one of those graphical questions too. I have, in fact, a pretty good exhibit drawing that's colored up with some measurements on it that I'm pretty sure I sent to Mark at one point, Collins. And I'd be happy to go over that too with the board, because that's a question you're going to get, I'm sure, a lot.
Yeah, because our concern is when that sidewalk goes in, we have 51-year-old bushes that are barricade for our property right now.
Yeah.
And truly, we're not only getting a $10,000 assessment, we're gonna get probably a $15,000 to $20,000 fence we're gonna have to put in, because you're coming through on a 10-foot easement, that's gonna be gutted. You put some plantings in, but they're gonna be like this. We have 51-year barricade of these bushes. So that's gonna be destroyed, when the sidewalk and stuff, they're just gonna cut up to their right of way. And what I'm concerned about is subcontractors come in and they just start chopping away, and they go 2 feet over into our property. And, they can't take it back. So is that gonna be monitored, like when they're bringing the sidewalk in, how they're gonna be cutting those things and be delicate about it, or is it just gonna be like a slashing, cutting?
We do have a construction observer as an independent third party hired by the city to oversee things exactly like that. You know, that the contractor stays within bounds, within the right of way, within the easement areas, within the intent of the contract documents. I can't say a mistake has never been made, and you're right, restitution then is difficult. But that would be on the contractor at that point. We'll do what we can to prevent that, but
And then my last concern is just when they're cutting that, there's gonna create openings and now
Mhm.
temporarily, can we just put something up there to try to block? Cause right now we have lots of trespassers as it is. And we've already seen an uptick in trespassers because the city brought some things in and cut through the bush a bit. And they're more down, so people are cutting through now. And it's like, we're not touching anything because we know you're gonna come in. So it's like, we're just gonna be dealing with a lot of trespassing on our lawn, is what's gonna happen when you're leaving this project, right?
there's potential for that. I mean, sometimes people help stay out of construction zones a little bit too, so it might be a little bit of a balance for people as to, does it look like they're cutting through someone's yard or entering into a construction zone? I don't know. It's a valid point, and I think we'll have to work together to see what we can do if it becomes a problem. But I don't know, sitting here right now, how to deal with it, because I don't know what it is just yet.
I think this line in particular is drifting away from the assessments.
Yeah.
So if we could keep ourselves on.
Well, it's the sidewalk assessment is creating that gaps. Okay, I'm good, thanks.
So, okay. Charles, I can tell you that Sarah Johnson has her hand raised.
Okay, Sarah, if you'd like to unmute, you are recognized.
Thank you. I just wanted to second what Tom asked of the possibility of maybe some extension from that 3-year to a 5 or a 7 on paying for the assessments, depending, of course, what the interest rate ends up being. That would certainly be helpful for us. So thanks for considering that. And then secondly, for the traffic pattern during construction, perhaps a possibility is the back of our building, the city lot, does butt up to Barb's property. There is an opening there if we need to route traffic behind Harbor. Perhaps that could be an option as well. That would be all I had.
I appreciate that second point, Sarah. Thanks. I thought there was private property abutting your property that we couldn't route public traffic through.
Well, it's,
okay.
I mean, the strip mall, is what connects kind of to the back, but that's a city lot behind our building. And
Yeah.
then that's her property, which there are some, it actually has concrete to go into ours where the daycare and massage center is back there, but there are some parking cement things there. So that would just.
Okay. Yeah, I'd be open to talking about that further with you.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
We do have Ryan with his hand raised online.
Okay.
Good evening. This is Ryan Farrell at Century Harbor Condominiums. Thanks for allowing me the opportunity to request comments, and I'd like to reserve my time if you could please present the final design of the Lake Street redesign on the screen for those of us watching online.
And I'm sorry, it would be for what?
To show the final Lake Street redesign rendering.
I'm going to be meeting with condo association folks anyway. Is that something we would be better off discussing at that meeting?
It depends when will the assessments be voted on tonight?
The assessment schedule would be recommended to the council tonight, and the council could take that up on 21st.
Okay, so the presenting of the residents with a spreadsheet showing the assessment without the rendering that is final, is irresponsible, and we're not in a position to give a recommendation one way or the other without seeing what exactly we're being charged for. So I saw multiple proposals in a meeting, I believe there was in March or April, I don't remember the exact date. Nothing has been distributed to any of the individuals on this spreadsheet showing them what they will be assessed for. So I think it's irresponsible to ask for feedback without showing us what it is and where it is that we'll be paying for.
Sure. I did send the plan drawings to those who requested them. I didn't attempt to send them to everybody, but
No,
if
they should, it
wants
could
to-
have been an attachment to the letter that was sent to all of us, and it also could be shown tonight.
it can,
I feel like if it's final and it's what will be built, then let's see it.
sure.
Not after the vote for the recommendation, but before, so that the public can respond to what the proposal looks like and not just respond to the numbers on the spreadsheet.
Okay, and I appreciate that. I know it's something of a fine line that we don't want to get into design discussions or changes.
No discussion, just to show us what the plan is.
Sure, and I will defer to the chair on a decision for that.
Okay, because there's not much in local media about what the final plan was. I haven't seen anything on easily accessible on the city's website. I've actually been looking quite a bit, and on base, I've looked through the agendas and the packets, and I haven't been able to find the final proposal image. So I just think it's a disservice to anyone who's being charged any sum of money tonight to not see the final project and have it available to us in the letter you sent to us. Not everyone attends these meetings. Not everyone has a meeting set up before the vote. So I think for any project in the future, any assessment that the city makes going forward, there should always be an image and a rendering of what people are paying for. And thank you for the time to make those comments tonight.
All right.
So Sean, I think that displaying the final rendering is fine. Comments related to the design would comments substantially related to any alterations of the design or criticism of or alterations of the design, support or criticism of the design probably wouldn't be in order, but the display is fine.
Okay.
Because we noticed this specifically as it related to the assessment and not as a design meeting. So
Resize screens, that seems to be showing up for folks. And let me get it. So that's demolition plans. So for the most part, that's going to be the hard part, I suppose, the panning and zooming, but along both sides of Lake Street. So coming in off of Allen Boulevard, sidewalk will be constructed along the north side and along the south side. Along the south side, we had made a design decision. When I say we, I mean the city made a design decision to try to save the mature maple trees along the Harbor Athletic Club parking lot, but still to construct a sidewalk with a narrower terrace. So sidewalk continues all the way along the south side of Lake Street, all the way around the new cul-de-sac bulb, wrapping around the north side and ending at the existing sidewalk that was part of the Lake 61 apartments. So that's the only stretch really that has existing sidewalk already in place. So that'll be both sides of Lake Street then. Along Dewey Court, I think the only infill spot is along the condominium property, along the cul-de-sac bulb in the back. And then there are spot replacements where water service connections, for the most part, will have to come through. And so we don't assess for those. The water utility pays for those concrete replacement costs. But further up Lake Street, I'm sorry, Dewey Court, than there are just spot replacements of sidewalk here and there. So the designer, MSA, had from their AutoCAD files pulled off square footages of sidewalk additions and driveway replacements and filled out the square footages into this spreadsheet, where then we applied some credits and the bid prices to come up with these figures.
And the gentleman in the T-shirt, I believe you had your hand raised a couple times for comments, but others were recognized. Did you have anything that you would like to say?
Yeah, I had a couple more questions.
And if you don't mind checking that the green light is on, sometimes it turns itself off.
No, it's on. I don't know if it was on before, but it's on now. Okay, okay, if we look at this part of the design, you can see here on this lower part, lower section here over here, this is our driveway right here. Entryway, but the cost of the new culvert and sidewalk for that section and so forth is all part of the plan. And so the amount that you're assessing us will cover for a new entryway, am I right, into our parking lot? So that we don't have to do anything else ourselves?
So a driveway apron, yeah, between the sidewalk and the curb?
Yes, and like, well, whatever damage is done along that edge of that driveway, we're not gonna have to worry about that. You guys are gonna fix it.
The curb and gutter, we don't assess for at all. Our assessment policy is we only assess the cost of curb and gutter for the very first time.
Oh, okay,
Thereafter, maintenance is a city expense.
okay,
Driveway aprons are 50/50. And then sidewalk work is 100% less any credits for side yard or rear yard. But yes, then we'll build that all with concrete and assess per our policy.
okay. Oh, well, if you have to redo our apron.
Yeah.
We're gonna have to pay that then again for that,
It's
in
half-
addition to what you're assessing us right now?
No, the assessment is the portion you would pay, 50%.
So it's in there. It's already figured in,
If it's shaded in, then yes, then we're planning on it.
okay? All right. Then the other question I had was along the Lake Street side of our property. I hear this, the phrase mentioned ADA. I'm not familiar with it, but apparently that's a 6-foot wide sidewalk that's being considered for that or being planned for that. And all the other sidewalks in the whole area are 4 feet, including the sidewalk that goes along the Lake 611 building property that leads up to that sidewalk stretch. It's kind of silly to put a 6-foot sidewalk on this final stretch of the sidewalk when the sidewalk leading up to it is only 4 feet.
Oh, I'll have to double check that. Our standard for new sidewalk had been 5 feet for many years. Old sidewalk was 4 feet, but it was decades ago we changed to 5 feet as a standard. We don't have much 6-foot sidewalk. Right next to Cromrie Middle School, I think has some 6-foot sidewalk, but very
I
little.
think that's a 4-foot sidewalk long.
Okay. Yeah, we
I
can
wanna check that.
double check that.
Okay, so if it is a 4-foot, we could probably expect some sort of adjustment to just leave it at 4.
Potentially. I'm not certain of that.
Lower our cost by a third, and that would be acceptable.
That would raise an interesting question, but we do have some on-street handicap accessible spots here that will want to access the lake. So maybe to the west of there, we might go 4 feet, and to the east of there, maybe 5 feet. I don't know.
Sean, we're getting into design here.
Yeah, I'll start by checking it.
Okay. I appreciate that. We appreciate that. I'm actually on board, so I'm speaking not only for myself, but for several others. Okay, that's all I need.
Are there any other comments?
We don't have any online hands up, but last chance. Oh, yeah, hold the button down maybe just for a second.
Okay, there we go.
Good.
Hi, I'm Christy Garglack. I'm also from Century Harbor Condos. I just had a couple questions for the condo units, and it might also affect the boathouses. Is it going to be separate bills to each owner or total to the association? Because the way it was laid out in the Excel sheet, it looked like it was total to the association. Just a,
Yeah, so when the bills go out, it'll go to each parcel identification number
cool.
effectively.
So if
So to
people
each
wanna-
individual unit owner.
so if people want to do a payment plan versus just paying upfront, that's per owner, not.
Correct. Individual decision. Yep.
Okay, and then you said there was a third party overseer for if things aren't going as they're supposed to be. Is the contact info going to be provided to everyone that lives nearby? Because we had a lot of issues with the apartment buildings and no one to talk to necessarily.
Well, so there's me, and I don't want to discount that, but we also have MSA under contract. I just don't know the individual yet who will be out on this project.
Is something gonna be mailed out with info so people know?
Yes.
Or, okay.
Yep.
And then I did just want to say in the future, I have been trying to keep up on the meetings for like plan for the park, and I know a bunch of people from our association have as well. And I think you're getting a lot of questions about it because all of those meetings, they've been going back and forth. And this is the first we're seeing of a final decision that we haven't been able to comment on yet.
Okay.
So you're asking for us to give opinions on the money when we still have opinions on the design that determines the money in the future.
It always is difficult, and I do appreciate that, that
It would be
we,
nice to like, even if you do them side by side on the same day, do the plan first, so then, because otherwise we're deciding something and then can we change it later if we want to change the plan for the park minutely?
well, and the park is not an accessible feature. That's its own independent design, build, kind of scenario, but it doesn't have assessments. So that's not really what we're talking about here.
Changing the sidewalk and the barriers and stuff.
Yeah, so it's sidewalk and driveway aprons.
But if we could comment before making final decisions next time.
Sure. And Betsy Ketselnik, I may be mispronouncing, but Betsy has her.
Yeah, yeah, and this is David, husband of Betsy. As a resident of Century Harbor, had a question. Right now, right along the water, there's a fence with a gate, and I'm assuming that fence will be gone. Now we, through that gate, have access for kayaks into Lake Street. And I'm wondering that if that will still be possible once the construction's completed.
I haven't seen on our drawings an intention to remove that fence. I know there's a little concrete pad out somewhere near that gate. We'll have to take that out. But the park plans themselves do entail or include a line of shrubs to help secure some privacy expectation that folks from the park don't go through the gate onto private property. And there might be a bit of a grade there along the north edge as well. So we do have some security planned.
We're off the assessment topic again.
See, sorry.
Okay,
We
yes,
can cover a lot of that at the association meeting.
great. So that you're, just to clarify, so there will be access for the people from Century Harbor to get to the boat launch. Through the gate.
Yeah, let's talk about that later. Sorry.
Okay.
And I'm sorry
But that is really, it's an important thing because otherwise it would be extremely hard to get kayaks from the condo association to the water.
Yeah, I'm sorry to cut that discussion, but because of the way this meeting was noticed, discussion about design is not in order, and we do need to conform to.
Right. Well, I was just saying that because if we're paying the assessment for the sidewalk to cut off our access, that would be concerning.
Okay, questions about assessments?
All right.
Thanks for-
I don't hear any other questions about assessments. Going once, twice. Discussion of item number 2 has concluded. Item number 3, Resolution 2024-23 Lake Street and Dewey Court Reconstruction Final Assessment 23-122.
Chair, if you don't mind just formally stating that the public hearing is closed.
Oh, yes, the public hearing is closed.
Okay, sorry about that.
Nope, that's all right. I would like to offer an amendment to the payment timeline on item number 7 in the resolution to extend out to change 3 years in the resolution to 7 years.
Did you mean that as its own motion or just to adopt it with that edits?
I'd like to have that be its own motion to
Okay.
amend it. Would anyone like to second?
This is Madden, I'll second.
Hold on a second. I'm sorry.
Is there any discussion?
Is that something that this committee has the authority to do, or would it have to just be a recommendation to common council?
Yeah, so if we modify this assessment resolution, it will be recommended to the common council as a separate motion. I would take it, but for now, it's just editing this resolution.
Yes.
Probably finance committee and then.
Yeah,
Council. So.
yeah, I'm moving to amend this, and then our subsequent motion is to recommend the resolution as amended.
Sure.
That's
Okay. So we're just.
Does anybody from
So-
common council get feedback on that prior to this meeting from the public?
Sure.
David?
It'll be posted. Public will have opportunity for comment on it. Because it'll be posted, 5 days before the meeting. So if the public's interested, they'll be able to show up and comment.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Any other discussion on that amendment? Hearing none, all in favor of amending 3 annual installments to 7, please say aye.
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 All opposed, hearing none, motion carries. I move adoption of the resolution as amended for recommendation to the Finance Committee and to Common Council.
I second that.
Oh, and if the committee is open to it, also include in that motion, approval of the engineer's report. It goes
Okay.
hand in glove with the resolution.
All right, I'll and includes and recommendation and inclusion of the engineer's report.
All right.
All those in favor, please say aye.
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 All opposed, hearing none. Motion carries. Next item on our agenda, North High Point Road traffic calming.
Yeah, and we have, and again, if anybody from Lake Dewey didn't have a chance to sign in, if you want to give me your email address, that'd be a handy way for communications. So Bill Huxma is here tonight, and he's one of the driving forces, the neighborhood leaders of this initiative. They've had a bunch of neighborhood meetings. We recently, mid-April, had a neighborhood workshop following through the neighborhood traffic management program, at which the neighborhood committee and those interested who were able to attend either in person or online had a unanimous recommendation that we bring forward to the Public Works Committee the idea of traffic calming on North High Point Road from essentially Greenway Boulevard up to Terrace Avenue to install 3 speed humps and a traffic island in the median near Terrace Avenue where it's effectively already painted, but to build that out of concrete. And let me just pan up a little bit for that's starting to show up on people's screens. So kind of south of Cobblestone, but north of the Greenway median, between the 2 cul-de-sacs, a bit north of Meadow Court, would all be speed hump areas. And then again, just south of Terrace Avenue near the brewery would be the median island, effectively where it's already painted. I put in the committee's agenda packets some staff comments where I'd reached out to Madison Metro, School District, Fire, EMS, and Police. There was nothing overwhelming in opposition. There are always some concerns with these kinds of things. And I would say probably most pronounced just from EMS, that if they're transporting somebody, it can be a less comfortable than desired ride to go over a speed hump, but they understand this is part of driving in North America now. And so they're not opposed to it either. They just wanted to be able to share that. So before the committee tonight, there are 2 things. One, the group has been following the process, and we got to this step following the neighborhood workshop. So we're looking for either committee endorsement or modification of the concept. This is not a design yet, but it's the concept itself. And then secondly, either some sort of approval or editing of the neighborhood affected area, which influences how many folks vote on this. And I laid that out as my best guess of those who would be most directly affected by this, because the trade-off always is if you make the voting area too big, if it's too watered down, people start to lose a stake in it and interest in it, and it's much more difficult to get people to vote. But one of the thresholds on our program voting is that we get a benchmark number of votes returned, and of those returned, a certain number have to be in favor. So if we mail these things out to folks who aren't interested, by and large, I would not expect to get a good percentage of return, and that can be its own problem. But beyond that, west of the Beltline is kind of its own thing that doesn't have to use North High Point Road. If we start getting far enough east, most of the roads empty out onto Parmenter Street, and they don't have to use this stretch of North High Point Road. So this is the, sorry, let me pan up a bit. So I put together a representative diagram of folks that we included in the neighborhood workshop and who are clearly directly affected by this as a proposal for the voting area. So it's really those 2 issues.
Sean, is Sunset Court one of the streets or not?
It is not, no. So we have Meadow Court, Cobblestone Court, and High Point Road itself.
At the risk of expanding the voting area. I do think that people on Sunset Court, if they're going to go up into town, are probably taking North High Point Road.
They maybe,
Depending
they
on-
could go Parmenter Street too.
They could.
So it was a coin toss for me.
Yeah. So I just wanted to see how people felt about inclusion of Sunset Court in the voting area.
What is your motivation for including it?
I think that just looking at this, going from Sunset Court to North High Point is a lot more direct than Sunset Court to Parmenter, because you're going through a small lane to Grosse Point Drive, through another small lane to Kenyon, and then to Parmenter, instead of just a quick.
Trying to find Sunset here. Court on the Sunset Court obviously intersects North High Point Road, correct?
Yes, it is the cul-de-sac
Okay, I see it.
due south
Gotcha.
of Cobblestone
So
Circle.
Sunset Court. Okay, so Sunset Court is a dead end. I get it. And it feeds into High Point. Just technically, I guess you would say east of Greenway Boulevard, assuming that High Point is a east-west road as opposed to a north-south, as opposed to a, for the sake of discussion.
I usually say north-south, but.
Do you really?
Yeah.
All right, so it's south. It's south. Gotcha. So including that would then mean adding additional calming measures somewhere between Greenway and Sunset?
Nope, just more folks that have an opportunity to get a ballot.
Oh. No harm in that. But I understand what you're saying by watering it down. I would say, what does the association, the people who are involved in this process feel? What it would be incumbent on them to then go out and seek their input and get the ballots?
Sure. Do you want to speak to that, Bill?
Do I need to register first?
No, but the microphone would be helpful so
Mm-hmm.
folks at home can hear you. And if you don't mind making sure that green light is on, sometimes it turns off.
Sure.
Yeah, just hold it down for a sec, then it should come
It's
up.
on.
No.
Okay.
Okay, what's the
Yeah, so
question?
my question to you was, how do you feel about then having to track down a few residents along High Point up to Sunset Court for input?
I'll give you a long answer. Is that all
Short is
right?
better.
What's that?
Short is better.
Well, not real long, but it's gonna be a little longer than short. We've been working on this since September. We've had a lot of meetings. We've talked with everyone
Sure.
on here. And I feel right now that you're asking us for rework, which should have been done before tonight.
Okay. I just want your opinion, that's all.
Yeah, that's my opinion.
Thanks.
And I live on Cobblestone and High Point,
Gotcha.
and we were never involved in any of the calming on the south side of Greenway. When that was done back in 07, 08, whenever that was.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to put that forward as a conversation to have here.
Sure.
No, I appreciate that.
Any other question?
No, I appreciate your input. That's.
Yeah.
That's why I want to know where you stand on it, what you're up for. Thank you. So,
That was off the cuff because we didn't even, nobody thought about it or talked about it.
so I'm involved in a project of this type currently with a group of neighborhood people in another area in Middleton. And getting a sense of the amount of work that goes into it and working with people directly like yourselves. And interested in input in a sense of work and time and effort. And so I really appreciate that. So my thinking is I defer to you, Sean, for your thoughts and input on this, because, you know, it's one of these things where we have kind of guidelines that you've already asked people to follow and
Mhm.
think neighborhoods to work with, and so I don't want us to mess up the process or complicate the process to achieve the goals of these neighbors. By
Sure.
adding more to it or making it more. What are your thoughts?
Well, and I think our process has some opportunity for revision, but they've been following the process the way it's written. And, so I can appreciate every now and then there's a conflict point, or as we talked about with the neighborhood workshop group, there's the potential for some loops too. If the vote doesn't pass, that doesn't mean it can't be retooled or re-envisioned and sent back out for a vote. Sometimes data gathering gets into a loop. So nothing's always just a nice straight line like we would prefer. But if the committee feels like in the city's interest that we're shorting somebody out of a process, this is my impression of what's a fair affected area and voting area. But that's not law.
No,
the
but,
committee can feel differently.
But I've said this often enough now. You may or may not remember, but I respect staff professional input and opinion on this thing, because that's what they do day in and day out, and that they're paid to do. And as an elected person, I'm here simply to try to look at it from that perspective of not you, but maybe more the constituent. And so
Sure.
I'm perfectly comfortable with your current assessment of the situation moving forward
Okay.
with the way it is.
And none of these are undrivable. It's not like somebody's cut off from downtown. They just can't drive them fast. And that's
Yeah.
okay. That's our goal. So I don't think it's life or death, although I do get those phone calls too, because
Oh, yes.
people do tend to either love these things or hate these things. We do not get a lot of gray area about these things. But at the end of the day, my car has not stopped because there is a speed hump in the road.
Well, I'm happy to support, make a motion to support current, your current objective and proposal as is at this time, and to continue it moving forward for ongoing evaluation and recommendation for future action.
I'll second that.
And that's for both the concept and the affected area then.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Is there any other discussion?
I do have a question.
To the microphone, if you don't mind, Bill. Boy, you're getting exercise tonight.
Because my hearing isn't as good as it used to be. What are you voting on? Is it the concept as it's been presented?
Yes,
Oh,
that's
okay,
correct.
yeah, all right, okay. But had a check.
Thank you.
In summary, in short, I'm recommending that we support this as presented tonight, and to encourage city staff to continue to pursue this.
Thank you.
All right. We have a motion. We have a
Oh,
second.
Brandon's got his hand up.
Oh, Brandon's got it. Okay.
One more, I did it just this last second. So, just, one more discussion point on the concept. I agree with this in theory. It's a very effective, like, safety measure. I was just looking up some, information from the Federal Highway Administration. I think there is some guidance about the spacing of speed humps being at least 260 feet apart. But I assume once this moves forward, it will get designed by a licensed engineer to review. how they are installed and make sure it's designed properly. Is
Yeah,
that
we'll to look at that. I know that they always say these things are better in series than alone. I wasn't aware specifically of that spacing as a recommendation.
okay? And I think it varies depending on if there's curves or hills and intersections as well. That's why I wouldn't accept the concept design as a final, but I definitely agree with having them installed there.
Would a better motion simply be to, Public Works and simply endorses a traffic calming measure that encompasses, and then we just state the geographic region from Cobblestone Court down through Terrace Avenue. The rest of it, obviously, details of engineering design and methods to actually achieve that goal, subject to city engineering review and recommendation.
Yeah, well, and the recommendation now is just to endorse the concept
Yep.
or not. So this is not intended as a design, but the policy process doesn't envision going through full-blown design only to find out the neighborhood doesn't support it. So it's always one of those balanced things. And on the flip side, if the neighborhood vote supports it, and then we get into final design and start budgeting for construction, it may be modified slightly.
Yeah.
Right? You know, because we don't want these things within 20 feet of a driveway either, because people just don't like that very much when they're backing out and one wheel is sort of tipped up, and that gets discomforting too. So.
Well, and I think as far as design wise, we need to look at that island. That particular corner is pretty sharp. I drive down it every day.
Okay.
In the winter. If your car slips, that's going to be problematic. Potentially. Also maybe a little bit of a potential backup for bicyclists, because the people that use the Capitol Brewery Bike Club that come in and out of that part will tend to turn all in that way, and getting around a big median island like that might be difficult.
Yeah.
Not just for the bike club, but for bicyclists just in general.
Sure. We normally leave 14 feet so our plow blades fit through. And we'll want to be able to turn a truck through there because the brewery sometimes needs that for deliveries, but we'll look at all that as we go.
Yeah, conceptually, I am in agreement with it, but I just want to make sure that there's some room for discussion as far as actual design.
Yeah, there'll have to be.
Great.
Yep.
All right. Is there any other discussion? Hearing none, we have a motion, we have a second. All in favor of Alder Lorman's motion, please say aye.
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 All opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. On to, we are at the hour and 20-minute mark for this meeting. I would ask for a 5-minute recess so that members of the committee can attend to personal needs. All in favor of entering recess, if there's a second, for 5 minutes.
Yeah, I'll second.
All right. All in favor, say aye.
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 Hearing none opposed, recess until 7:54.
All right. Well, and we're still in our Zoom meeting here because I don't want to turn anybody off by mistake. Okay. But, yeah.
So what is your schedule? You're gonna, did you tell me you were going to send a notice to everyone before the ballots go out?
I have to double check the process myself.
It doesn't say that.
Yeah, I typically don't, as much as I would let normally the neighborhood committee go door to door because your finger is on the pulse of your neighbors, and just let them know that a ballot is coming. And
Yeah.
then my letter
Yeah.
includes the ballot and here's what it is, and we need you to return it, and you know, we'll summarize results anonymously.
Take care of that.
Okay.
And your intent, not intent, but your general idea of when those ballots might go on?
Oh, and that I don't know if I can fit it in a couple weeks or something. What do you think? You need to go chat with people first, just to let them know it's
Yeah,
coming.
we'll probably just send them emails.
Oh, if you have their emails, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, a couple of weeks, yeah, give us a week to get that, you know,
Yeah,
get any feedback or whatever, but.
sure.
So generally a couple of weeks.
That's my first guess, because I don't really have to draw anything at this point. We just need to let people know it's a concept. Do they say yay or nay?
Say, and then, yeah, I just want to make sure we're still on track to get it into, if it passes the ballot, into the 2025 budget request.
There should be time for that yet. Yeah, that's
Okay.
usually not due till early or mid-August
Okay, fine.
that we can go.
Good, thank you.
So-
Thanks for your comments and support.
All right, have a good
See
night.
you guys later.
Yeah.
And we'll have another one that is coming down shortly for our friends on Oak Creek and Pleasant Branch.
Yeah, we've had some trouble with our data collectors.
Machine,
Yeah.
you know, I went out there, it was a nice day and I had to get my motorcycle out and warmed up, so I rode over there and I saw them.
Yeah.
So I did a few circles in the street over it.
Really fast.
Yeah. But I was checking it out. and I
Thanks a lot, Dave.
I saw one, I did see one of the like little rubber wires or whatever you call it.
Yeah.
Crooked on the road.
The
but I don't-
tubes.
Tube,
Yeah.
but I would imagine that was the issue, probably something much more internal to the machine.
Yeah, it seemed to be underrepresenting speed. Like we were getting really low speeds and I looked at it and I thought there's no way that's right. So I asked Tom to take the suspect box and a good one and put them like
Oh.
next to each other and see if they come up with the same answer. Cause it just didn't seem right, you know, that we were getting people going that slow on Pheasant Branch Road. I mean, it was like 12.
Right.
And it was out of bounds.
Interesting.
So, yeah.
How you doing over there?
I'm all right. You had asked me earlier this year if I would be walking through my neighborhood at 6 o'clock in the morning, look at where people's garbage cans were placed and
Oh, yeah.
how many parking spaces they took up. I would have told you were crazy, but here we are.
Yeah. Do people put the cans at the end of their driveway?
Yes, and where I think we're talking about tonight, it becomes problematic in certain places, so.
So what do they do? They're just off to the nose, okay?
Yeah, so if you've got, I don't know, should we wait until actually?
Yeah, fascinating.
Yeah, that was funny. My kids were like, where were you? I was like, I'm looking at garbage carts.
I get on my bicycle regularly and ride the streets of my district and just check it out. you know, See what's going on, see what's not going on.
Yeah, that's what I did on Saturday, because I kind of
Yeah.
looked at some of this resurfacing, like, oh, yeah, no, I don't really like to ride my bike down this part of Canyon.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
just,
Right, that made it into, was it? No, what's the major, it was Kenyon, the big road. We didn't get that in the budget last year. Yeah, no, yeah. Right, yeah, it was Kenyon.
Yeah, so on Saturday, I rode through Stonefield and over and looking around Boundary.
Yeah, we discussed that last year and, you know, finance and budgeting and and then it made it, got through. Because the question I kept asking at that time was, to Sean again was, well, if you do it sooner than later, then there's there'll be less damage to the surface underneath it.
Okay, the time is now 7:55. The recess has expired. Is Brandon still present on Zoom?
His video is not on yet, so let's give him just a sec here.
All right.
There it is.
Now he is.
Okay, we have a quorum. The meeting of the Public Works Committee is back in order. I believe that we have two members of the public left for an agenda item. So I'd like to consider item number 9, ordinance changes Lake Street reconstruction 23-122 out of order, out of its noticed order at this time. All in favor of moving forward for consideration. Item number 9, ordinance changes Lake Street reconstruction. There's a second for that.
Thorman, second that.
All right, there's a second. All in favor? Aye.
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 Hearing none. Ordinance changes Lake Street reconstruction 23-122. Sean, if you could walk us through your memo there.
Sure. So sometimes with road projects, we'll need to change some ordinances that are no longer applicable, and or write some in that are suddenly applicable. So among those that, oddly, I noticed that Dewey Court at the approach to Century Avenue is not in our ordinances right now as being stop controlled. The sign's been there forever, as far as I know, but it's not in our ordinance. So I'm proposing we add that. But having Lake Street prohibited from parking 135 feet west of Lake Mendota will no longer matter, partly because we're building a park over most of that. But in larger part because that had been intended, I think, for trailer maneuvering for the boat launch, but there won't be a boat launch. So it really just doesn't matter. Instead, ordinarily, we disallow parking from the bulb of a cul-de-sac so that any larger wheelbase vehicle can actually make the turn, which is the whole point in building a cul-de-sac. So typically we prohibit parking there. And then the Lake Street boat launching facility right now has a restricted time limit on mooring of boats. It was, I think, back to the days when the pier had been donated to the city and installed. I think it was von Rutenberg's family that had a restaurant right nearby. And they said, well, if we give you a pier, can we make sure people can tie off for a while, but not too long? And so we have this ordinance referencing a 2-hour time limit for boat parking effectively. But really, we won't have, number one, the driving need for boat parking there, that like the restaurant traffic had been. But number two, my understanding, and I know Kylie's no longer at this meeting, but that little pier that's being envisioned really is for access to the fireboat and for fishing. And I think there's a handicap kayak launch off the end. So it's really not for tying off of boats at all, to the degree that there's a railing with a small opening. So I think just taking out 21012V entirely would be in the city's interest. So that was the thrust of my memo. I'm certain there will be other things as they come up, but for now, I at least wanted to take down signs that won't make any sense anymore.
Okay. I think we have people who wanted to speak on this item from the public, so.
Okay, I mean, I really hadn't planned to speak. We tried to summarize our points in this email that we sent out this afternoon. I know it was late. I don't know how many of you had a chance to read it. We're just concerned that things don't fall through the cracks, basically. And by addressing some of these ordinance changes, I would say more of a piecemeal fashion rather than looking at it and coordinating it with the, whatever happens in the park area and that involves the rezoning of Lake Edge Park, as well as any ordinance changes that might be needed. It might be more meaningful to put it together kind of as a package, especially if you have to send it to committees like license and ordinance and council, to see it combined and supporting the entire Lake Street reconstruction project. So we tried to highlight, I say we, I'm talking about Tim Carey, the owner of Lake 61, Tom and I, and we also have some representation from Century Harbor Condos. So we've been trying to work together, and together we represent approximately 200 housing units in the Lake Street neighborhood. So we just tried to put a few points together here to address kind of what, should there be a loading zone? I mean, you talk about removing this section of parking down at the cul-de-sac near where the park will be. But should there be a designated kind of drop-off area, because that's where people would be dropping off their paddling equipment, loading, unloading. So that was one point we raised. Another point was speed limit. And should there be signage posted or put following, I believe it's the state ordinance that you folks have some of the wording in the Middleton ordinance. It could have speed limits down as low as 15 miles per hour. And would that be a good thing to post and use that as a kind of a traffic calming technique? So we mentioned that in this. I'm just hitting some of the highlights here. And then, yes, we do not want motorized boats mooring on those piers, with the exception of the city's safety boat. And there are other things that might fall into the park ordinance and the park zoning that would be standard. I don't know, but you know, no swimming. There's been talk about no swimming, posting park hours, keeping pets on leashes, no amplified music, no storage of equipment, things like that. So that's what we tried to summarize in this statement that we sent out this afternoon. So I don't know if you have questions for us or Tom, if you, maybe you want to add something?
Yeah, I'll just say that I think we tried to take the point of view of, we didn't really know where all this is gonna come up. This is the first time ordinance changes came up, and we're seeing kind of the whole package that, or thinking about the whole package of changes that need to be made to make the area work well together. Basically with multiple functions of residential, the street, the park uses and so forth. So we're kind of taking that point of view. We don't know exactly how this process is going to work. So we're kind of looking for some direction. How do we coordinate all this? You know, did you want to just address the street stuff? Do we go to parks, or is this best somehow, you know, done individually, but you, Sean and Kylie, coordinate sending it to the common council, you know, or the committee in one batch together? Because some of this seems to like be under the parks, basically. So, but we saw the parks, you know, amending the parks ordinance come up here, so we're kind of putting everything on the table and just looking for some guidance on how we tackle this, because we do have some concerns, and we do see where we think it's really useful to add some of these items to make it work well, in the spirit that the common council adopted the project. Also, kind of, we've had discussions on speed and slowing it down, and trying to do that, calm the street, and that's been going on for years. We didn't feel like the speed bump really worked well. And in looking at the ordinance stuff here and thinking about posting the speed, I ran across the statute or the code, state code, which basically kind of talks specifically, that's why we put it in here, but specifically to a situation like this, where you have an area with kids and a park and so forth, and it presents an opportunity where under state code, the city can directly adopt a 15-mile-an-hour speed limit or something lower than 25 miles an hour that actually is a default. So we think that that's actually a good thing to do. It would really be proactive in providing a message to people to slow down. This is an area where we need caution, where we have mixed use. There'll be people basically will be using that area of the street for parking for the launch. And there'll be kids getting out of cars, families getting out of cars, right? In the street, basically. We do have a lot of wildlife waterfalls that just walk right up the street. It's a blind corner going around that area. So we think it's important to slow it down. We think that this might be a good opportunity. And also the state points to basically 15 miles an hour is an appropriate speed limit. So we think it's good to acknowledge that and maybe start a discussion based on that.
Yeah, I don't know if or when the council last talked about speed limits posted speed limits at 15 miles an hour abutting parks. I don't recall it coming up in the last few decades, but that might be something the council would want to consider.
It seems like it's almost tailored specifically for this situation where you have, it's not a very broad, but there's a list in the state code. There's a list of items or applications for 50 miles an hour, like school zones,
right?
Areas where kids are playing, crossings, things that we take every day, but it really makes the point, and people, I think, take it seriously. 15 miles an hour. That means that they need to use caution. They should go slow in this area, and they kind of have, and then they have that one provision that says, yes, a city can adopt 15 miles per hour into their ordinance in this situation when it's adjacent to a park, when there's people, there's going to be children and different things. So it seems to almost be tailor made for this unique situation that we have on Lake Street.
Oh, yeah, I wouldn't read it to be unique to what's going on or what we think will be going on Lake Street as much as school zones, parks, places where children might be abutting a roadway and maybe not paying attention.
Exactly. And as a resident, I've seen it, but this is really, the parking lot for this park will be the street.
Sure. Yeah, as it is for many neighborhood parks.
And I don't think that's a real typical, usually there's some parking somewhere off street for parks.
Some have that,
Yeah,
right?
so.
And
we're encouraging.
Many are embedded just in neighborhoods, I would say.
Sure. But there is a lot of traffic that does access that end of the street. That's not going to be associated with the park. It happens all the time. People just using it for turnaround. All the time, we have people just cruising down there. We have kids that, people that just come down there and sit. There's quite a bit of traffic that's not associated with the landing now. Or people that are associated with the landing come flying down there, even though they know it's a dead end street. I can't explain it.
Yeah.
So whatever we can do to encourage it without, I don't think without having to go as far as the speed bump and going through a study and all that stuff, and the state codes allow it. Maybe it's prudent that we start there from the point of view of safety.
Yeah, and that's always difficult to say. I would just caution that if we do one thing in one place, we should be sure either it's unique or we're going to intend to grow this.
Absolutely.
Because doing one thing in one place, if it's not definitively unique, is going to lead to either frustration or expansion.
I think this is kind of getting at that Jenny and I recognize, and Tim, and we've had limited discussion, but more from Century condos, that there might be more here than just the two ordinances that we're talking about tonight. There might be more here to discuss and making the finishing up this project, basically, for the whole street.
So, yeah, I think that's the point. There's some specific points that need to be written into the ordinances, and I don't know about the zoning piece for the park, but also the process for flushing all of that out. I don't have a clue how that process works or how in this situation you could make that a coordinated effort and make sure that something isn't slipping through the cracks. So that's kind of our concern.
So we look for your guidance tonight, I think. And, you know, thinking about what we, on the loading zone, I would say that it strikes me as just from a code, you're prohibiting parking. So you're prohibiting people from loading, unloading. And do you actually need something in the code to say, oh, here, you can do 5-minute unloading here? Yeah, you know, it's kind of a cleanup type of thing because it's going to happen regardless.
And part of that comes down to, you know, to what degree are the police going to enforce something, right? You know, so if you say 10-minute loading zone and someone's there for half an hour, what do? Call the cops?
Or to what degree do you want to give direction? Because without direction,
Right.
anything and everything happening.
It wouldn't surprise me if someone pauses for 5 minutes, drops something off, goes and parks and comes back and gets their stuff in a no parking zone.
Right.
But once we start saying, oh, there's a clock and we're going to measure this, well, we better mean that. And that becomes a problem.
It is more so for the people that we've seen in the past that will park for half an hour at a time, clean out their boat, clean their equipment, you know, kind of stay in that area and start blocking traffic and so forth. So
Sure.
you know, hopefully it would give a message. I think what we're trying to, you know, you're always trying to look at, yes, there's a balance with enforcement, but unless you're providing a message up front, you don't even have anything to start with, you know, and giving a concept or about expectations, basically.
Sure. Well, and you're right. It's a policy choice. So if the city wants to do something about that, different than no parking, we can make that sign instead.
And I think we're raising things for your consideration and thought, yes, from a whole project point of view.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Thank you.
So there are a couple of options that I could see. One, we could defer this and Kylie can take a stab at writing some proposals from a park use standpoint that I didn't even try to look at. Or we can move this forward and independently move forward park stuff. Or we can modify this. We can, you know, and move it forward, or just defer this and give it some more thought.
Kind of breaking it up a little bit. I can understand cleaning up some ordinances because it needs to be done.
Mm-hmm.
It is going to be a park, and the idea is for it to be a park.
Right.
For paddlers to go there and do launching. I'm a local paddler, and you have to stop somewhere. You have to unload your stuff, and lightweight trailers as well. And then get your equipment walked down to the water. Takes time, it's messing around. Now, do I pay attention to signs, whether I'm doing it legally or not, or in a parking zone or no parking zone? I probably don't. I just get as close as I can to the water, and then I start unloading my stuff. And I've done it from that exact location many times over the years.
Okay, sure.
So as you slip and slide down the slime covered ramp, yeah. So I don't know. Maybe parks can look at some of that. I don't know what to recommend from kind of I'm just saying I'm a user and I've been using that area for 10 years. Paddling in and out of there, so I don't know what to say, other than I use it. I use Marshall Park and I use Middleton. I use, you know, go over to Cherokee Marsh. I go to all the places. And I don't know if there's signs or not. I just get as close to the water as I can to put a boat in. If you think signage is gonna help control things, moderate things down there. And I've never been down there, or it was so busy I couldn't pull in or park. Or you look at another boater who's there and you kind of agree to double park each other for 5 minutes while you unload your stuff. And so I see I think we should clean the ordinance up if that's gonna help. Right now.
Well, some of it just won't, like no parking 135 feet from a lake. Well, that just won't matter in the very near future. And frankly, when we pull the signs, it really won't matter. They just won't be there.
So I think there are two separate
Yep.
issues here.
So I sort of see.
And one of them is the stop sign at Century Ave on Dewey Court. I don't think it makes sense to defer consideration of that.
Yep.
Since it's already there. And we'd just be cleaning up our ordinance, whereas the others are maybe a more involved conversation about looking holistically at signage around the boat launch.
Mhm.
So I'd move adoption of 15.03.1 stop sign locations, Dewey Court at Century Avenue.
I'm okay with the 15.04. I mean. It's just, I guess. It would go in. When are we gonna start doing work there?
Well, I don't know. We gave a contractor a window sometime between June and October, so that's 5 months, but they only get 3 months of that.
So,
they haven't told us when they're gonna start.
yeah, by the time this makes it through Common Council, LNO, it's now May. So this ordinance wouldn't even go into place till June anyhow,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. I mean,
LNO?
Yeah, Eleanor needs, it's obviously not on our agenda for tomorrow.
yeah. Okay. So,
So it would be, I mean, if we're not gonna meet again until June, even before it went through Eleanor.
And construction will start in June.
Probably. Yeah, maybe June or July, or
Okay,
could be as late as August, and they'll still get it done.
so then maybe 15.04 would be okay?
yeah, I could see 15.04 in as well.
Then it would align with the time frame, just because by the time it makes it through LNO.
And are you saying both parts of 1504 to strike one and add one?
No, as you recommended.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the first two sections is what I'm hearing.
Yep.
Okay, but not the 2101
Let's see.
about mooring boats. There's no place to moor them right now.
And other than the fireboat, there will be no place to moor boats in the future, if.
Correct.
Correct.
There
Yeah, I
will be,
think we can move forward with all three of these.
I would agree with
Okay.
Brandon.
yeah,
Yeah, I'll accept
and
Brandon's
there will
amendment.
be
Do you want me to make a motion or?
Yeah,
Charles, you kinda started
I'm
one.
withdrawing my motion. So,
Okay, then I move we accept the letter dated May 7th, 2024 from the city engineer and recommend the common council approve it.
so you're recommending we approve the ordinance changes
The
suggested?
ordinance changes,
To license an ordinance and the common council.
yes.
Okay.
That's all right. This is Madden. I'll second.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Hearing none. All right.
And I would say in respect to public comment, as, other future recommendations, those are very good things, really to point out to parks.
Yeah.
And have them take a stab at it and get their input.
Yeah, I'll talk to Kylie. I think that's good input.
Would it be fair then to entertain the speed question again in the future if there's here, because wouldn't that be a street specific function?
Yeah,
at
that's,
First, and that I feel that it's here that we approach it, you might get opinion from the park, but it's usually tackle that issue here.
I think it would probably start here and like, you're right. If we're talking about speed limits near parks, we should include parks. So probably two committees to get to L&O and council.
So basically, it's not putting it off the table or anything, but you're comfortable where basically what I'm hearing is we can take up other ordinance changes and move them ahead. And we don't have to worry about coordination of getting one package to the common, L&O and the common council.
We pretty routinely do that. Yeah.
And just a thought was, I think during the construction, pretty much the street is going to be shut down, the landing's going to be shut down, I would assume.
Right. No parking, no boating.
Yeah, and really my end of the street past 6100 Lake Street, I mean, we can all access Middleton Beach Road. So I'm envisioning this might help with the Century condo trespass and stuff. That whole end of the street can probably be just shut down for the period of the time if you're not trying to provide access to the landing. And the point being, you're not going to be so concerned with the 90-day during the construction with this, with these ordinances. So.
Well, the Dewey one is more pressing. I don't know why that's missing, but yeah.
The Dewey, but the Lake Street specific ones. So
Mhm.
maybe there's opportunity to coordinate if the others come up and they can all go to common council together eventually.
What I don't understand is, do the ordinances drive the signage? And at what point is signage talked about or finalized? When do we see a draft of what you recommend as far as signage? And maybe that's after Parks does some of their work. And then we look at it together. I don't know, but I think it's important that the signage be in place when the construction is completed and the new improved areas opened up.
Yeah, so regulatory signs are driven by the ordinance. If there's no ordinance, the regulatory sign doesn't mean anything. That's why stops and no parkings and speed limits and all those things need to be written in an ordinance to be enforceable. Warning signs, pedestrian crossing, right? Yellow diamond kind of signs don't need to be in an ordinance.
So those will just be established. Okay.
Yep.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
for doing this, and
And it sounds like that we should just continue to work with you, Sean and Kyler.
Yeah.
And Courtney. Great.
Right.
okay.
Thank you very much, folks.
And thank you for moving the item.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I hope it's not too much longer for you. Have a good night.
Thank you. Have a good night. All right, moving on to agenda item number 5, Elmwood Ave, Kenyon Drive, and North Westfield Road resurfacing bid award. All right, Sean, if you'd like to.
Sure. So this is a pretty straightforward recommendation for a bid award. Sean Allsrud, who's actually on the line tonight, but for a different agenda item, took this on and opened bids, put together the recommendation of award, which is a recommendation to Payne and Dolan Incorporated in the amount of $927,127.64 with funding from General Capital Fund and then the utility portions from water and sewer utility funds. So, and as Sean's memo lays out, there are sufficient funds in each of those accounts to pay for the overall project. So this would be a recommendation to Finance Committee and the Common Council.
Laura Manu, make a recommendation that we just put it up here.
Oh, I have one here.
Okay.
If you want.
recommend that we move ahead with Elmwood, Kenwood Drive and Northwest Field resurfacing bid awards 24-104.
Myers second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, hearing none, the ayes have it. Next agenda item, item number 6, Century Ave Bridge Replacement Agreement with County for Cost Share of Design Phase Services.
Right, and this is more of a paperwork catch-up kind of thing than anything else. The county's already under contract with Strand Associates for the design work. They're already going on this. In fact, we've already had an open house on this. And this is catching up now that the city formally will enter into an agreement with the county to be the lead agency and will pay half our share of the costs.
And this has already been reviewed by the city attorney.
It is not, but it's very standard county-city agreement.
Probably along the way, that same question we asked again during finance.
Yes.
And hopefully along the way then at our common council meeting, so another couple set of eyes on it. And just following this, I mean, I recall that, you know, this was already put off obviously once, so like you said, we're playing catch up to it.
Yeah, we had verbally agreed to it. We budgeted for it. This is just now paperwork. So we can make this contingent upon approval of or city attorney satisfaction. That's pretty normal. He always reads it before it gets to the council, but barely.
Well, I'll make motion that we, Public Works move ahead with resolution, Century Avenue Bridge Replacement Agreement with County for cost sharing of the designated phases of the 21-111 agreement.
This is Madden. I'll second.
All right. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, hearing none. Motion carries. Item number 7, 5-year street improvement plan.
I'm having all sorts of trouble with my scrolling.
Worked for once.
Oh, now I'm going the wrong way. All right, try that. Okay, and not that we're going to be here real long on this page, but I don't know if you all had a chance to get onto the city website and see the revised 5-year plan now, which is where the real guts of this thing are. In the PDF also, we have the 2023 approved plan snapshot, but we've gone kind of off page from that and made the changes that the committee had recommended on April 8th to combine Stonefield Road with some of the nearby other roads and move those to 2027 to step them up a little bit. And then to include High Road north of Spring Hill Drive in the plan for construction in 2028. So Sean Allsrud made those changes and they're, well, I think I've got a different page up here. Ooh. I have to move like 6 things off my screen just to get at my own internet now. So let me get to
So the 2023 map is outdated. That's a new packet.
Yeah, so well, that's the current one, right? So I'm gonna go down to. So that's the. So much stuff in my own way on my screen. Okay, try to put this back together now. Now that I can, I think, pan around a bit. Okay, so when we get to the website and get to GIS and click on the 5-year plan, let me. Zoom this down so we can see a little bit more of it on the screen at a time. Oops. This is a challenge. On your screens, it kind of shows up as if we've got a lot of real estate, but on these 15 inches, there's not a lot of real estate. So. Okay. Yeah. See part of what I wanted to look at.
Are you looking for the map, Sean?
Well, I'm trying to, I have the participants up, I have the video up, and then I have a page up, but getting to show up on the central third of my screen is just asking a lot because it doesn't want to resize nicely. I only have so much screen available. So we may have to just struggle through it a bit.
If you can get to the upper right-hand corner of the map, that'll just expand at least that page to show just the map. There you go.
Yeah.
Now you can zoom in and at least see.
All right. So. Layers? No, legend.
Yeah, you don't.
It's going to chew up a lot more. So everything.
I've got the years up here on my screen, Sean. If you want to close that, I can explain which color is which year. And that way they can see the map.
Okay. So let me do this for people. Boy, that shows up nicely on your screen. Okay. So in the lower area, so that's the Stonefield Road with Clover Nook and several other nearby cul-de-sacs that are all kind of pulled together into one project now. And what did I say? That was 2027?
Correct.
High Road north of what had been the city limits prior to Misty Valley getting constructed, and now more recently Red Tail Ridge subdivision starting in that section of High Road, which is not entirely in the city, but we have an interest in working with towns to see if we can do that, is moved to 2028. And the other big change from last time we talked is that the county recently is interested in pushing the Century Avenue resurfacing project to 2029. So there were a few balls thrown in the air, and Sean rejuggled all of that with priorities and with funding limitations and came up with this map as an alternate to what we had talked about on April 8th. So I don't know if there are questions. At the end of the day, once we get Public Works satisfaction with the map that staff is proposing, then we'll want to move it off to the Plan Commission, the Pedestrian, Bicycle, and Transit Committee to provide input to the Finance Committee and the Common Council for adoption of a 5-year plan. And we'll need that done prior to working on the 2025 capital budget staff proposals.
So did the Century Avenue project go from 2026 to 2029?
Correct. Yep. Mm-hmm. Yeah, the county pretty recently told us about that. So we didn't know that on April 8th. I think it was later in April we heard that.
I mean, that's a bit disappointing, but if it's the county, that's not really, the city doesn't have a lot of say on that, it sounds like.
Well, we'll fund share with that, and we've been working on signal and intersection improvements at Q&M over by Hedden Road, and then also at Century Avenue and Allen Boulevard. And so we wanted to get those done prior to the resurface project, but we've also got some utility work that we need to design and get done. So from that perspective, having a little bit more time probably works in our favor.
So if that was bumped out, what took its place for earlier, like in 2026?
So do you want to take that, Sean, or do you want me to?
I think you'd better. I'm looking at little drawing here.
So our initial proposal had shown, we didn't have High Road on there. That was asked by the council last month, that if we could add that in. That's we've earmarked $1.2 million for that. We do have some funding in escrow from the subdivisions. So when that got pushed, they also wanted to try to lump together the Stonefield neighborhood into one group. So it's never just this one went here, so we bumped this one here. It tends to shift all roads because you have to make everything fit within the budget of the $2 million capital borrowing that we have each year. But for the most part, the addition of High Road is what's replaced Century Avenue.
Well, and I think we had talked about Mound Drive. Is that 26? Is that right?
Yes, so 2020, so 2026, we have Mound Drive in now because we've had additional main breaks there. So that has been pushed to 2026 so we can get design done.
And we have the Boulder and Columbus and cul-de-sacs with Mayflower project.
Yep.
That's on the 2026 board for a while.
Yeah, and that's also a reconstruction. So that's a larger project.
Right. And Parmenter Street must be more of a resurfacing, I take it.
That's a resurfacing, but we're also going to have the additional costs of the speed humps. It's not a huge cost, but we do have that traffic calming that we need to replace.
Replace those. Marina Drive is probably a pretty straightforward resurfacing project.
Correct. And then we have the one cul-de-sac up in the,
Orchid Heights area.
Yep, it's that's not Heather Court, but that's a sole cul-de-sac that's left for that neighborhood that we want to try to get. So when we introduce one project into the 5-year plan, it shifts everything around, and it's difficult to track where one street was unless you go through them one by one. If you had a specific street in question, I could tell you where it was previously versus now.
I'm just concerned about, the ones that that we really committed to getting done, that were in great need, that have been, if they have been pushed off, and how far.
Sure.
And that's really as a result of, like you said, the High Road project, isn't it?
Yes. So, Sean, did we include the streets removed PDF in the packet?
I just want to see what was removed.
I have the 2023 approved plan.
Okay, I have
in the
that
packet.
up. I'm looking at that, so. So in 2023, we were supposed to do everything in green, which was Lake Street.
Well, and that's in gray now because we're doing it this year.
Okay, so Lake is done. And, well, I'm sorry. That's not gonna help, obviously. Okay, Elmwood Avenue, Canyon.
Yep.
West.
Yeah, those are all on for this year.
Okay. So then it would be the 2025 in blue that was getting moved around. Franklin.
We're hoping to design that this year for construction next
So that's getting
year.
put off here.
Well, that's if we can find the staff time to get the design started. It's
Okay.
been hard to get that staff.
Graham Mound.
Yeah.
Mound Street up there.
So that's 26.
Little strip of, is that a parking lot on Hubbard? Between Hubbard and,
That would be the library parking lot
Yeah.
down to the depot. That's been in the 5-year plan the last few years. I think we have it on for next year.
the parking lot is so-so. I've been on it enough time.
It's always kind of 1 year out because of the civic campus potential. I mean, nobody wants to build a brand new parking lot
Yep.
and then find out we're throwing it away.
Okay. I just, the infrastructure underneath it, if there's anything you should worry about.
Really not, no.
Right. So it's everything in blue on that map. All right, well, it doesn't look terrible then that we're messing with anybody, and I haven't heard from anybody in my inbox. Coming after me.
Basically, we've added 2029 onto this 5-year plan, obviously, which is another $2 million. So shifting of those roads around from year to year, they really only bounce maybe a year forward or back.
So the Stonefield project, for example, that's a big one.
Yeah, that's one that we had that, I believe, for 27 and 28. And they really wanted to get that into, they wanted to do it sooner and they wanted it all together. In part because we didn't want to do Stonefield Road and then go in and do the connecting streets to the south, because we didn't want to be driving equipment on the new road. So Public Works had asked that we lump all of that together.
Yep, that's a big one. See that?
Yeah, and then the addition of that high road.
And of course, yeah, Park Lawn, that's a heavily traveled road. I see you got some little cul-de-sacs, Knights, Goose Point, Sunset, some little cul-de-sacs, courts. Oh, Cobblestone Meadow, that's over where, okay.
And I don't know if the new members have had a chance to look around in the GIS. And I'm not gonna ask Sean to pull that up because it's so, he's having such a hard time. There is another in that 5-year or in the street dashboard that you can see online. You can see an area that basically all the streets are in red, green, and yellow. And that's based on Pacer rating, which correlates to what we're gonna do with them. Red being roads that we need to resurface. Yellow are streets that we're currently maintaining with chip seal and crack fill, things like that. And the green are the roads that are basically maintenance free at this point because we've just done them in the last couple of years.
Okay.
But if you look at the 5-year plan and then you look at the street planning map, you'll see that we're basically going to wipe out most of the red in this 5-year plan. So if you're projecting out 5 years and wondering where we'll be, I don't want to say we won't have streets to resurface in 5 years because some of those yellows will fall into red. But we do have, I think, a pretty solid plan for the next 5 years.
Yeah, I just think about when this gets to finance and common council, you know, some people will just, you know, they'll chime in, there'll be kind of the mantra lately has been holding the city to the plan, holding everybody to the process, holding everybody to the schedule. That's airing what I hear, that's all.
Yeah, and it is just a planning document. So if the city wants to do something else, that's absolutely okay. You know, we're just trying to figure out of the measurable criteria that feed into what we propose as staff, how do we rate the highest need roads within the overall budget that you know, typically is available for this kind of thing. Without trying to skew too much, because one of our high interests is in spending money to keep good roads good.
Exactly.
Because that is the cheapest way to maintain streets.
Yeah, and then that's what I've always supported, is that, that we always remain common council and those of us who, may or may not lose track of things over time.
Right. Yeah, it's easy to point at something really bad, but we will constantly be chasing stuff that's really bad.
Yeah.
Because all of our money will go to streets that are really bad. And we spent enough time digging that hole.
And you will notice on the 5-year plan that as we move forward, that maintenance budget is going to start to creep up. For many years, we've had a 250,000, it'll go to 300, then 350. And that's a really good thing, that if we're spending the bulk of our money maintaining it, means we don't have roads that we have to resurface.
And so on the subject of that comprehensive plan, Sean, do you have any pertinent crash records for
Yeah, I do have, and I'm pretty sure I can bring it up on what's left of my screen, some community maps information. It feels to me like the 5-year plan is probably its own action item.
Yeah.
And then discussion of crashes is probably a related item. So I don't know in what order we want to do these things. I doubt very much that the crash map, one way or the other, regardless of what I show you, is going to drive the boat on what our 5-year street plan should be. But it might inform what our design of any individual street should include.
Yeah, it makes sense to me. So
I'm okay if you want to move ahead and support this 5-year improvement plan at this time.
yeah. So I have a motion to recommend to
Be Plan Commission and Ped Bike Transit and
Finance and Common Council.
Finance and Council, after it goes to those other two.
Alder Lorman, were you
Nope, I'll second that.
Oh, I thought you were making that one and I was going to second.
Motion it, I seconded.
Okay. All right. We have a motion. We have a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Hi.
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. On to discussion of crash records.
Okay, I'm temporarily logged out here now.
John, you don't need any input from me on this, do you?
I do not. You can enjoy the rest of your evening.
Thank you.
I'll see you tomorrow.
All right.
Crash records, where's that? on the agenda?
It's part of item number 7.
Oh. Why is it not at all on any of your on-base documents? Oh, yeah, okay.
I think it's just general discussion, right? Because
Okay.
a lot of this is information that's difficult at best to share.
No problem. I gotta just get on another page here, that's all.
Okay, so there's a website called Community Maps, and it has some limited functionality for those who do not have a WisDOT sign in and authorization to view some of this information. So I got set up with credentials long ago so that I can look at individual crashes and crash reports, all of which contain personally identifiable information. So it's not the kind of thing I put into a packet or share. So it's the kind of thing after I read these reports, they don't stay with me. They don't belong with me. And so I can give high level summaries of these kinds of things. And it's really, really good what, police have crash diagrams and they have narratives and they have statements that help me dive into more than just the high level of this happened, then somebody got sent to a hospital. It often enough says, who was cited for what the factors were, whether this was daylight or nighttime, what the road conditions were, that help dive into, well, what does this mean? And what, if anything, can the road do about this versus this was really bad driving. And it's just not possible to blame the road. So as much as part of what irks me is when you hear on the news, like, oh, the car crossed the center line, as if the car just decided to cross the center line. There was no personal involvement in that, and no responsibility for that. It's just a thing that the car did. And, so that's always bothersome. So that's part of why I read these crash reports, is to figure out, well, to what degree did road conditions or weather conditions or some other conditions play into this versus just, somebody was drinking too much and missed the road and hit a tree, because that's a lot of what I read. So Community Maps is sponsored by UW Research, that works in conjunction with Wisconsin Department of Transportation Safety to look at a lot of that information, both at a high level and at a predictive analytic level, to try to figure out what are our real hotspots, what are our real problem areas, what are our real sources of concern that we might be able to do something about. I'll say too that normally when I'm looking at stuff, I'm looking at crash rates. And so I'm not so interested just in where are there a lot of crashes, but where are there a lot of crashes relative to the volume of cars in that specific area, whether it's at an intersection or away from an intersection. So we want to look at crash rates when we're comparing these things. This doesn't get into crash rates. I still have to do that by hand, but it does at least tell me where the crashes are. So, for instance, I can, often enough, we look at, try looking at crashes in a 3 to 5 year window, because statistics bounce up and down a little bit, and we try to normalize that without getting crazy with information. So normally that 3 to 5 year window is kind of our sweet spot. But we can drill this down by various counties, and I'm only ever interested in what's happening at home. But we can also look at rating crashes by what's called the CABCO system. Lots of states use this. So when the police reports get filled out, they try to denote a severity of injury, if any injury. So it goes all the way from there's no apparent injury. They just call this property damage or other. So it gets this O rating. If there might be an injury, maybe nobody was transported to the hospital, but they were complaining their wrist hurt, they might be in category C. A and B tend to get a little bit more serious. A is almost always, somebody's transported. They're calling an ambulance for these folks. And then fatality, obviously the most severe of all of these all have different weightings, so when we start to look at economic impact of crashes, this matters a lot. K, A, B, and C are rated very differently than O is for dollars per crash. We can look at lots of different flags in high-level summaries as to whether there's a bicyclist involved, pedestrian, motorcycle, teen driver, older driver, whether they were in a work zone. In some cases, we're looking at deer crashes, but not very often in an urban setting. We're just not going to get a lot of those. So I used to drive through deer country, and that was a bigger problem out there. So part of it is, what do we want to look at when we look at crashes? Because crashes isn't any one thing. Are we looking for severe crashes? Are we looking for pedestrian crashes, bicycle crashes, all crashes? And then at what scale? Because if we're looking at city of Middleton, I can get a heat map, but I'll tell you right now, they're on county roads. They're not going to be local roads that get a lot of our crashes. The crash rates, it might be a little bit different. For years, our highest crash rate intersection was University Avenue at Parmenter Street before we built the left turn lanes. We haven't looked at that since, but it hasn't been as high a crash number, not rate, but just number since then. So part of what the city's comprehensive plan says is that city officials should regularly consult crash records in conjunction with the city's annual 5-year plan, which we're looking at right now. And that prior to starting the development of the public works budget for the following year, we should be looking at crash data. It doesn't particularly say what crash data. It leaves that up to the city officials, presumably up to and including the Public Works Committee, Pedestrian, Bicycle, and Transit Committee, and the council itself. So anyway, so this is a tool that I often use, when I'm interested in an area of concern, something happens and someone says, oh, we should look at that. This is what I do. Go look at that. And it's not unusual then for me to say, oh, there have been 15 crashes in the last 5 years. And what contributed to them? What, if any, pattern can we see from that? And then what, if anything, can we do about that? So I can tell you now it's difficult to look at the whole city because, again, it's going to show me county roads have crashes. But it is, I think, informative that while designing these things, we can say, oh, this intersection seems to have something going on. Let's look into it. And then we can tell the designer, we might need to look specifically at left turns here, or restricting left turns here if it's a high enough crash problem. Or, rear ending is often another problem with left turns. Where car following just doesn't know somebody routinely turns left there and drives right into them. So that was one of the big problems we had with high school traffic coming off of University Avenue is folks just weren't expecting that. So I don't know if there's anything specific you want to look at within this tool, because again, you all can get into it, but I think you can see push pins of, oh, there was a crash here, right? But you cannot get into the crash records without authorization.
Correct. So part of why I wanted to make sure that we included this as a discussion is first, just to get the ball rolling and to get used to doing this now, since it is in the comprehensive plan, but also I believe the Ped Bike and Transit Committee is in the process of developing guidelines for implementing the Complete Streets policy. They had that on their last agenda. So I think it would be useful for us to have a conversation with them about what specifically, in terms of data, we'd find most useful for evaluating those.
Exactly. Yeah. And it might even be something of a different tool that the MPO has been working on, more region-wide than just the city of Middleton, but more of a, it's heading toward more of a Vision Zero kind of document. That it's still a bit in its early stages, but the city might choose to springboard out of some of that information. So this is just one of those things. If I bring up all crashes, you see an awful lot of green push pins, but You know, when I'm looking at green push pins, those are property damage only. And if I, oh, that's all the county, but if I were to refigure that to look at really serious injury sorts of crashes, then it's a pretty different answer. Deer crashes. Take a minute.
So in terms of time horizon, Sean, do you think 3 years or 5 years would be most useful for you in general?
It sometimes depends what it is. I'll often start with 3 years, and if I'm just not seeing much, I'll peak at 5 years. You know, but I don't tend to get all. I have seen, you know, if I just start at 5 years and go through 24 crash reports, they're pretty much all the same thing. So it's not terribly difficult to see a trend if there's a high number. If it's a low number, well, then I'm going to see a scattering typically. So most of what I'm interested in is trying to get a feel for what's going on and what of that is roadway related. And so I don't have a hard and fast rule.
All right. Does anyone else have any other discussion on this item? I don't think we really need any action on it. So let's move on to mixed use redevelopment, 6300 University Avenue, TIA scope of work.
Yeah. Reset a few screens here. This might take a sec. Okay. All right. So, well, let me move this over a little. Maybe. That's better on your screens. So this is one of those traffic impact analysis reports. And as usual, our consultant took a look at the overall area and said, you know, the city's guidelines would cause us to do a study of a certain scope, a certain number of intersections, with a big focus on signalized intersections within proximity to the site, and then other what we would call significant but unsignalized intersections within usually a different radius of a site. In this particular case, we're looking at signalized intersections within a mile and significant stop-controlled intersections within 2,500 feet. So that gave a certain number of intersections that our guidelines would say, we should take a look at that. Not so much to say, should we or should we not do this development, but really with a focus on, with this development, is it going to trigger the need that otherwise would not exist, all things being equal? Will it trigger a need for some sort of roadway improvements that we can directly point back to this development for? Not just regional growth, not just area patterns, but this development. So that's the overall focus. And our consultant, like I say, often then looks at, well, moving one more thing. Is there any reason to believe, in their opinion, that maybe the scope should be pulled back a little bit or something changed a little bit? And in this particular case, pretty sure they gave me a map to go with this. Yes. So they suggested that these red intersections that are within the city's guidelines for the study scope, with the project site being right here at the corner of University Avenue and Gateway Street. These red starred locations, definitely they think should be included. The blue pin locations are also, you know, not signalized, but somewhat more major intersections in the area that they're thinking in their estimation are unlikely to be materially or significantly affected by this development to the degree that it would trigger the need for some sort of improvement. Not that it won't contribute to more traffic at these intersections, but that we won't need a third lane or, you know, something pricey that might require additional right-of-way or additional pavement or something else that we just didn't see coming and can't deal with, right? Almost everything contributes to more traffic. The question is it going to lead to a city expense? So anyway, so they're recommending that we not include in the study scope these, I think it's, I don't remember how many it was just offhand now.
10.
Is it 10?
9.
9 intersections to be eliminated. Now, I did get an email this afternoon, and I didn't have a lot of time to read it, but it was from a person who I think lives right in the area that suggested on Gateway Street, these additional 2 intersections at Lakeview and at Mendota should also still be included with, I think, the rationale that any traffic that would affect this intersection, I think that's Mound Drive at Gateway Street, would also surely affect these 2 intersections. So I don't know if any of you had a chance or saw that. I think he wrote to the entire committee. But I wanted to pass that along to a resident's advice. So.
Yeah, I did. No, I appreciate that. I appreciate that. I saw where that memo came into play. Gotcha. So to summarize, the recommendation is the developer pays this cost for this analysis report.
That's correct. Yeah,
And
we
this is
asked
the-
for escrow for this.
And this is that project of the 2 buildings that they want to build a walkway across and put a
Yeah. So this
car dealer, what?
Oh, no,
Or no,
no,
what
this
was-
is largely residential. It's
Residential.
apartments with a little bit of commercial and
Commercial
one drive-through.
Yeah, drive-through. I kept hearing the word drive-through.
Yeah, drive-through. Yep. But no, I think it's pretty small retail. It was like maybe 4,000 square feet, something
Yeah.
like that.
It's not a very large redevelopment project.
Mostly residential.
Yeah, okay.
And it's sizable residential, I would say. Right now, it's more really just an office building.
And we're,
So the question is, do we want to accept this or increase that scope by those 2 more streets?
Yeah, I think. Well, I mean, right. The question is, what scope do we want to set on this? So they offered some reductions that they think we're not going to find any surprises. So why spend the money on it? And a resident cautioned that he thinks a couple more could materially be affected.
District. We haven't heard from the alder of that district.
I don't think adding those 2 additional blue dots on Gateway would be unreasonable. I think that the person's logic is that if you're going to look at that one intersection, that will continue down other ways, especially if you go down Gateway and then cut over to Allen Boulevard that way to avoid that signal.
Yeah, exactly. Are the residents living there just gonna be zipping down through that area routinely, theoretically, to get elsewhere, possibly? Bring some.
Yeah, and the other question is, well, what would we do about it?
There's already stop signs there, obviously.
Right.
Solution to everything,
And
speed bumps.
But I mean, would there be so much traffic or so much additional traffic on that, especially that first blue dot, that we would need to consider putting something like a traffic circle there? Like,
Mhm.
I don't know for sure how many, I didn't see how many potential units and residents that would be added to that development.
We're estimating, I think, 100 to 499 vehicle trips per peak hour period, according to the memo. So, um,
Yeah, it's a pretty big range when you get into a medium-sized study.
yeah.
But I don't remember either what their estimated peak hour trips for this particular development will be. And normally they don't do that till they get into the study to pin it down.
Well, like I said, I would be in favor of all of the red dots plus the two blue on Gateway. I think that's at least worth looking at if we're going to take the time to do a traffic impact study.
And we're right by the park too with that. So
Support. Alder Madden's suggestion.
It's about to have been a motion.
Getting
And
close.
can we make it a motion?
You may.
I will make that motion.
I will second that motion. To include the two added site locations at Gateway and I can't see it on the map.
And Lakeview and then Gateway at Mendota.
Mendota.
We'll add those back in.
All right. We have a motion. We have a second. Do we have any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 All opposed, hearing none. Motion carries. And now we've already dealt with item number 9. So we are on to ordinance changes, Pleasant View Road reconstruction.
Right. So there's not so much on Pleasant View Road other than because it was a rural cross section, people could pull over and park. Now that there's curb and gutter, they can't. And also we put in roundabout control so we can get rid of the two-way stop control. So the proposals really are just to eliminate some stop signs and to put up some no parking signs. And this recommendation would also then go to license and ordinance and common council.
I recommend to L&O and common council the modifications outlined in staff memo.
I'll second.
Oh, you were so close, Brandon.
It's a time delay.
Yeah. Yeah, the routing.
Yeah.
Darn it.
All right. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, hearing none, motion carries. Now we are on to ordinance review, solid waste collection.
Yeah, if anyone read and understood this, kudos to you. Our ordinance was a little bit difficult to figure out in relation to what do we do with condominiums, because it keeps talking about properties. Oops, I'm gonna need to plug in my computer. Give me just a sec here. As a violence power, bad things happen.
There's no juice under here, is there?
Yep, but I see a power strip that might be connected to something.
I'm gonna suggest we take a 2-minute recess so that Sean can deal with that and we can attend to our need.
I'm feeling pretty good about this.
Great.
Gonna find out. Ready to go.
All in favor of taking a 2-minute recess?
It's plugged in.
Oh, okay. Never mind.
How about that? All right. So our ordinance right now is a little bit confusing with relation to condos. Most other properties, I think, make enough sense for us to use this on. And the way I've interpreted this, I'm not certain is the same way my predecessor interpreted this. And I'm not sure either one of us consistently interpreted this, but which is part of why I tried writing it down. As we get more condos coming into the city, it starts to matter. I think that we treat them as buildings and not properties. And so a big part of this is stepping out on, I hope not too big a limb, but to say, you know, if there's a property, because condominiums tend to be a property, a parcel, if you will, that could have multiple buildings, each of which only has a few units. Well, that's not materially different than if we have a whole row of triplexes or fourplexes on each on individual lots, right? You know, I think part of the overall intention was that we don't get streets just lined with hundreds of carts, you know, per frontage, and that it's a manageable situation both for collections and for street use. You know, so an apartment building that has 70 or 80 units in it, we just can't have 80 sets of carts out in front of an apartment building on collection day. But if it's 5 condo buildings, each of which has 4 units in it, while that's 20 units and therefore 40 carts, if it's spread out enough, maybe that's manageable. You know, and that tends to be a little bit how condos have gone. So Conservancy condominiums off of Pheasant Branch Road, for instance, has something like 60 units in it, but they have a private street internal to the development. So it's not overwhelming for solid waste collection vehicles to go pick up carts in front of each of those buildings, even though they're all on one lot, right? But what we don't get is, what would that be? Something in the ballpark of 130 carts lined up along Pheasant Branch Road, if that starts to make sense. So that's kind of the way staff's been interpreting this, is to focus more on buildings and less on lots, even though the ordinance talks about properties.
So if I dumb this down, what I'm really seeing here is if the building exceeds a certain size with occupants, you put a dumpster there instead of allowing them to have a bunch of garbage cans. And I guess what I would say, yeah, right away is will be a hot potato. And I would be very hesitant to make a decision on this, us alone.
Yeah, which is fine.
I can see this like just the moment we start, the moment we don't have a big picture. I mean, at the end of the day, we may still make the same decision that supports this, but I think without adequate public input, maybe there needs to be a little more notice out there on this thing.
Yeah, well, and for instance, Red Tail Ridge is right now building condos. Many, many buildings on one lot, and people are about to move in. So I did instruct our office manager to let Pelletary know that I'm okay with us issuing carts that have a contingency on them that we may come back and take them away again.
Because you'd have to have a space to put a dumpster.
They would, right?
But for places that don't right now, might have to kind of sort that out. Give up a parking spot, maybe extend a little pad of pavement.
Build something, right? But then also each of those residents might be nowhere near the dumpster. I mean, they might be toting their garbage 2 blocks.
That's
Well,
right.
not 2 blocks, but, you know, past many other houses to
You
go
got-
use the dumpster.
You got ADA things, you know, people have to get there and they have to get it out, and it's winter time and it's slippery and it's
Right.
hot potato.
So it feels like the more reasonable thing to do is don't worry about the lot lines and worry more about the building and the number of residents and those kinds of things. And again, if the council wants to clarify this with better language, that's very, very clear. I will welcome that. I have tried several times sitting down and writing that, but I don't know how to write that.
I would say you don't need to.
Yes, this feels like a council plan commission question to me.
It's not urgent, but it needs to be addressed. And I think we need more input from stakeholders, local condos. And yeah, let the council know and get the word out somehow. We, as council people, could we send a draft exploratory memo to council presidents, you know, these organizations at these various places and say, hey, we're under pressure to make a decision. Stand, whatever, however we want to phrase it, but kind of give them a heads up so they can start, you know, the airing of the grievances.
Yeah, I don't know. So is this memo something you want to forward
Yes.
to the council?
Yes.
Is that what I'm hearing?
It's, yeah, I'd like that. Brandon, what do you think?
I'm reading through it right now. I agree with your strategy on that, Sean. And I agree with what David said, that this probably is something that needs to go to a larger group. So I think I'm okay with forwarding this on as it's written. I'm just kind of skimming through it right now.
Is it a plan commission thing or is it just a council thing? I mean,
I think just because it touches on how we're defining properties and not for this purpose, it might be there, but it could just go to council and it would be functionally
that's the
similar
ordinance
enough.
too, sort of, no.
Oh, it's definitely an ordinance because it's in
Yeah.
604
Yeah, I mean,
that says, here's
every-
how we distribute carts.
So I think everybody needs to just have to be aware that, I mean, you should present it at the next meetings, you know, when you have, just kind of sell it to each one of us, and then so we can get it out there and get it in the notes and in our meeting minutes so people have a chance to review it and get some input.
Yeah, the way
Hey,
the
Sean.
ordinance is written. Oh, sorry. Go
Yeah.
ahead, Brendan.
The way you explained it is the way this is written, right? Your staff interpretation is the way you just explained it with how. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, because the other ways of interpreting this, I think, could lead to huge problems, right? I mean, if an apartment building with hundreds of units, and we have those, were to condominiumize, and each unit then gets its own parcel number, and they say, oh, that's now a property. Does that property get a set of carts? Because it would be a disaster on collection day.
Sure.
Yeah.
You know, and I mean, we get enough feedback from folks who say, so-and-so put stuff in my cart.
Oh, yeah.
And,
Yeah.
and, you know, and I'm like,
Oh,
well,
yeah.
you're in a condominium. I don't know what to do about it. Your cart and their cart are right next to each other. I cannot come over there and tell you whose cart is whose. I don't know. Like,
and
you're
the-
just gonna have to work it out.
Yeah, even like I think it's a Fox Ridge apartment building right on Middleton Street in my district is 8 apartments. They
Yeah.
have 4 carts and it's, you know, apartments 1 and 3 and 4 and 8, and
Oh.
it's disaster, right? Because then they just come out and start putting things and it's
Sure.
caused a lot of issues in between the neighbors, so.
And in theory, they'd probably be better off with no carts, but
But-
it's
but if we're
slightly
getting-
cheaper for them if they have some carts with maybe limited dumpster service, and I get that too.
And that's an expense for the building. And so
Yeah.
I agree, we need to put this in front of more eyes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would know how to speculate on the price on that. I would imagine if you had space for a dumpster, obviously it would be cheaper.
Yeah.
From a resident standpoint, but like you said, is that something they all wanna? And then who wants that dumpster like right outside their unit, you know, banging and the door open and the raccoons climbing in and out and
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
That's
They just-
something they would have to do if we're limiting them to 4 sets of cards, right?
Right.
Yeah, and some of those with just 6 units say, well, I'll take my 4 sets and maybe that'll do.
Right. That's why I think those larger multi-purpose or use buildings already have that planned into their designs.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So I'm okay with recommending we send this on to the Common Council. Want me to make a motion?
Sure, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah. So we have a motion by Brandon to forward this memo to Common Council for guidance. Do we have a second?
Oh, this is Madden. I'll second.
All right, we have a motion, we have a second. All in favor, please say aye.
I.
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Hearing none, the ayes have it. Next item on the agenda, policy review, repair of damaged grass.
Yeah, fortunately, we don't get a lot of these in any given year, but right now our policy is a little thin. I mean, it gets into the nuance of getting a call as if that's a major thing, but it doesn't say really what we do other than we'll go repair the damaged grass. So our operations manager, Brad Hopwood, just started over with a blank piece of paper and rewrote it. That kind of said, you know, fine, we'll get notified somehow, or we'll just make a note of it ourselves. They know as well as anybody when they hopped a curb with a plow blade and started chewing up turf. But at least then we'll know to notify the property owner and what's happening and what's going on. And our crew will come by with some topsoil and seed and mulch. And ideally in spring, you know, get grass to grow. What we're not set up to do is water the grass. And we want to put that in there too. But then also Brad and I talked about even just putting together some really basic information about grass care on a door hanger that we can hand to people and say, you know, here's what we did. Here's what we're asking you to do. It's terrace grass. Most of it doesn't tend to be beautiful, but you know, we don't want it to be mud either. And so, you know, the more people can help take care of it, the better off I think we all are. So anyway, so he put that together. He and I talked about that. I said, I think this is a wholesale policy change instead of trying to fix the old one. Let's just throw it away and start over. So we're here mostly for feedback, input, suggestions, or if you endorse it, we'll put it in action and correct it as we grow.
I'll make a motion that we support this draft memo to allow the city to address damage from any, call it city equipment activity, personnel, staff.
I'll second.
All right, all in favor? Say aye.
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 Aye. All opposed, hearing none. Policy review, leaf collection.
Yeah, and after you hear this spiel, you'll be able to apply it for the next agenda item as well, but it's the same issue that we've been running into. And again, this is literally a handful of places, but for those properties that have multiple frontages, and some have as many as 3, we're asking that people put stuff on the lowest traveled street, or at least in their front yard, instead of along county highways. And it's just been a hassle from a safety perspective for our crews to pull over and close a lane on county highways while picking up brush. They have a lot to pay attention to with that brush chipper, and vehicles coming up behind them is just, unfortunately, I mean, it's not on their radar, but it really also should be on their radar. But a chipper will take your arm off, and
Yeah.
that's just the reality.
Full disclosure, I'm a guilty party involved and can fully appreciate this memo
All right.
and take responsibility for known violations on
Oh, well, I didn't know that, Dave. If you hadn't turned yourself in.
multiple frontages of property and do solemnly swear to never do it again.
Yeah.
I unfortunately only have the one frontage on Century Avenue, and I feel terrible every time I put things on my curb.
So,
Yeah, if there's nothing you can do, there's nothing you can do. But if there is a chance, it minimizes risk, and I'll take that.
I've had a personal worked with Brad.
Yeah.
Put on this, personally met him on Highway Q and personally helped remove said piles of leaves.
How about that? Yeah, he's a good guy.
So as much as I would like to have the city continue to pick things up, and for me, which is the least distance I have to travel, I will abide by putting it in front of a house and work with my neighbors to encourage that.
All right, I'm putting you down then, Dave.
You may, there are 3 offenders on one side, on my side of Highway Q that I can account for. I can't account for the people on the other side, that's Alder District 8.
Those people.
But I can account for Alder District 7, and I did try to reach out to one of the residents on there. I've gone to their house, knocked on the door several times, and they never answered. Their stuff is still sitting out on Highway Q.
Oh,
Their brush and their leaves.
okay. Oh,
Yeah, and
it's not really leaf season anymore, but
Yeah.
no, I tried tracking them down, so yeah,
okay.
they're still, their leaves are still there,
Hmm.
and so is their brush.
Okay.
And Brad did say, that person is just gonna have to deal with it on their own at this point.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, I think it would be fair if we get the brush until we roll the policy out. It's tough to red tag something that's not technically against the rules.
So if you make a note and the city is willing to make one final pass on the north-south, guess it would be the
Probably east side is
side
8.
of Q, west side. Probably both sides, it doesn't matter at this point. It would be one last pass on Q before this is.
Yeah, I don't know when that week is. You would know, huh?
Well, on brush pickup or,
Yeah.
well, you do brush all year.
Yeah, but only 1 week per month.
Yeah.
That's a scheduled thing. I just don't remember which week that is.
I think that part of town is always the latter part of the month.
Like 4th week.
Yeah, 4th week. So. Thank you.
All right, so do we have a motion to adopt these changes with an effective date of
Like June 1.
yeah, June 1.
Foreman will make a motion to amend our leaf garden waste collection. Is a policy. Right, just policy.
Yeah.
Okay. As drafted in the memo of 5/7/24 to and all the language on pages 1 through 3.
I will second such motion.
All right, we have a motion, we have a second. All in favor? Please say aye.
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 Aye. All opposed, hearing none. Policy review. Brush collection.
Yeah, and this is really, oops,
Yep, sorry, I got ahead on that, so.
really the same
Same thing.
issue though, just a different machine. So it's really the same proposed change.
Laura, I'll make a motion that we approve the city policy revised 7/24. Whoops, I'm sorry, 2/21/14. I was reading the wrong side of the document on the last motion. Sorry about that. For brush collection,
Okay.
pages 1 through 3.
I'll second.
All right. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, hearing none. The last item on our agenda, the Plan Commission is trying to have more communication between committees. And so I've been asked to give a 5 to 10 minute presentation there on a number of topics. My plan is a brief overview of the 5-year street improvement plan as amended, a very brief update on current year road construction, discussion of Elmwood Avenue resurfacing, and mentioning that consistent with the comprehensive plan, we're now including crash records, but we're waiting for more guidance on specific parts of how we're integrating all of this into things from the pedestrian, bike, and transit committee, as well as discussion of signage for the bike routes that are meant to get cyclists off of University Avenue for Elmwood and Franklin. Since that if you look at the bike map for the city, that's where we want the cyclists to cycle, but we don't currently have signs marking those. And I've personally gotten feedback from residents about that. So I do want to mention that signage for those routes is something we should have. Then this brings us into item 2, which is a discussion of planned bike routes, potential improvements. Specifically, I'm going to talk about the underpass for the bridge that we're redoing on Century Avenue.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
And the extension of the Allen Boulevard multi-use trail. And then there's pedestrian safety near schools. We have the bump out that we're looking at near Cromrie, I believe.
I think the recommendation was to try to get a crossing guard
Crossing
at
guard, yeah.
Brookdale.
Yeah,
And then if that didn't work, to consider a curb extension bump out kind of
Yeah.
thing, but just on the west side of
But
my
just,
recollection.
yeah, at that intersection. And I am going to mention that we've had a number of parents come to our committee with concerns about their students walking to school. And I do want to raise one broader issue, well, a few broader issues with Plan Commission, specifically about the complete streets policy. I think it's good, very good. Just under the implementation section on item 10, the Ped Bike and Transit Committee has to come up with guidelines and meet with the Plan Commission, and that's great. But one of the things that I think would be really useful is if our committees periodically, no more than twice a year, had a joint meeting, Ped Bike and Transit and Public Works, to just go over the planned next year implementation of the complete streets policy, and a meeting where we go over where are some things that we could be, what are some things that we should be looking at longer term. And I think under the implementation section of the complete streets policy, some sort of plan along those lines makes sense. I've asked Tad, the chair of the Ped Bike and Transit Committee, if that's something he'd be amenable to. He said yes, that makes sense to him from an implementation standpoint as well.
Yeah, and especially, once the budget is adopted, it would be best if we could meet shortly thereafter. I mean, literally in winter, prior to hiring consultants for design. Because what gets difficult is to say, well, we're almost done with design, and then find out, oh, but we really wanted these other three things, because a lot of that has ripple effects into drainage and everything else that then are difficult to get done in time to bid it.
Yeah.
So that'd be good to know.
Yeah, and the committee liaison position is absolutely wonderful. And Carrie does an excellent job. It's just it's inherently a very telephony position. Because she participates in those meetings, she votes, she comes back to our committee, she informs us of what was discussed there. But for a 5-year street improvement plan, or for the next year of construction, I think we'd really benefit from having that conversation directly with the full committees.
Yeah, it might be a good way too to review some of that crash or traffic data and say, what are the concerns, or what are the concerns we could conceivably do anything about, and take it from there. Because otherwise we get a lot of feelings, and I never know what to do with that. About, like, I feel this is unsafe. Well, okay, but what do you do with that?
Yeah. And then the other broader issue that I want to talk about is I've noticed that Ped Bike and Transit have met about potential future tactical urbanism studies. And I think, based on my conversations with planning staff, incorporating those studies into the neighborhood traffic management plan process is something that they would be supportive of. Now, it obviously doesn't always make sense, with the speed humps, as we've discussed in this committee, the temporary ones cost about as much,
maybe more than the permanent ones.
So, those probably wouldn't make sense. as a tactical urbanism study, but there are some areas where we might want to do that. Or we might want to do a study as part of the process.
Yeah, that was the one thing we noted. I don't know if everybody was sort of plugged in. The one time we tried tactical urbanism as a project, as a neighborhood initiative of, hey, let's see what happens, was to build a temporary traffic circle on Elmwood Avenue out here at, I think it was Bristol Street. And
Just either that or Middleton Street.
either that or Middleton Street, because I can't remember myself. But there was sort of no process, no way to collect before and after snapshot data, no sort of neutral way to collect even opinions about what this did, or, you know, what was the good, the bad, the ugly, what would we have done different if we did it over? So it was really hard to collect meaningful input from people afterwards. And at the end of the trial period, we took it down, but then had no idea what to do. And I think we left people with different expectations, like, oh, this will become permanent, or there will be some vote on this. And none of that was in a process. So I think that was the biggest thing we learned from that, is we really need a process to guide people through this.
So I'm going to suggest potential incorporation of tactical urbanism studies where they're cost feasible and
yeah,
into that process.
You might mention with bike ped stuff too. We're moving forward with that LPI study, the leading pedestrian interval signal phasing. I did get a proposal from our consultant that does most of our traffic work, and I just haven't had time to read through it yet. But that's further than we've been.
And so you have that bid, but not
I have a proposal, I just haven't read it.
okay.
Yep.
And do you know when that will be on our agenda?
I don't even know if it has to be. It depends what the
Okay.
proposal says, because it's already been through the budgeting vetting process.
Oh,
And
yeah.
the committee had endorsed it at that time. So if it's
Yes.
entirely consistent with that scope of work and within our funding, ordinarily small projects like that, we just go forward.
Okay, yeah. I couldn't remember whether we budgeted that or not. So, yeah. All right. So that's the outline of what I intend to say. If anyone has suggestions, amendments, things they want me to pull, things they want me to add.
Yeah, you could circle back. Actually, I don't even know to what degree the Plan Commission was aware, but specifically, we also have in the budget some funding for the design of pedestrian safety improvements of the Park Street crossing at Elmwood Avenue. And I've had some difficulty finding a consultant interested at the budget range we have allocated to try to take that on, because it's a maddeningly difficult thing to deal with, but we're still pursuing that.
Wasn't there a discussion back in like February about painting some of the crosswalks at those higher volume intersections to increase visibility?
I think they're painted with the ladder style crosswalks on Park Street. Head Bike Transit Committee had a specific request that we put a traffic circle in at that intersection. And I think that's causing some consultants to kind of wonder, well, how do we do that on Park Street at a sort of significant cross street? Because we have trucks and buses going through there. So I think they're trying to consider other things that could promote safety without being a traffic circle.
Well, a traffic circle, like a roundabout you're talking, wouldn't that require quite a bit of real estate?
Well, a roundabout would, but a traffic circle is just a little
Oh,
circle of concrete in the middle of the intersection that disallows people from turning or driving through it.
okay.
But then the difficulty becomes, well, how do you turn left? And in theory, you should go 3/4 of the way around it. And if you're driving in a car, that's fantastic. If you're driving in a truck, that is far less fantastic.
Is this part of this discussion?
It was just an idea that Charles may mention that as part of his briefing.
Okay, you don't want us to. Careful on it.
Yeah, so does anyone have anything else they'd like me to add?
I think that's more than enough for 5 or 10 minutes.
Yeah, I think so too. I'm gonna have to speak very quickly.
Just one slide.
Yeah.
It is, yeah. There's a lot going on.
Yeah, I think it's probably just going to be prepared remarks and not slides.
There you
because-
go. Yeah.
All right. So
And that's fine. We don't need any committee action on that.
yeah,
Thanks
yeah.
for sharing, and I think you're on solid footing there.
All right. Well, with that, we now have one topic left, and that is items for future consideration with no discussion. Alder Madden,
I have nothing.
Alder Lorman,
Nothing.
Brandon.
Nothing.
I have one item, and that is I'd like us to have a discussion about funding for tactical urbanism studies in the upcoming budgetary year.
All right.
And with that, we have reached the end of our noticed agenda. The meeting is adjourned.
Good thing we found some electricity.
Yeah. You know, I was 50-50 on bringing my charger to this meeting because I just knew it was going to get caught up in this chair.
Yeah, I